You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look me better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the fourth part of What If Deku Enters Gravity Falls. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of jkawsome on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. The golf cart skidded to a halt, and its 6 passengers climbed out, led by none other than Stan Pines himself, proud to show off another one of his great mysteries. In this land of ours, there are many pits, he announced, but none more bottomless than the bottomless pit. He leaned casually against the sign proclaiming the pit they were standing around to be just that, which, as you can see here, is bottomless. Mina peered over the edge of the pit. It dropped down and down into such darkness that she couldn't see the bottom. Question, Soos asked. Is it bottomless? Stan let out a long, suffering sigh. Kids, can one of you try explaining this to Soos? I mean, it's a fair question, Izuku pointed out. It obviously goes down a long way, but is it bottomless or just a really deep hole? Just about anything can happen in this town, so do you know for sure? Stan shrugged. Honestly, who cares? It's bottomless enough for our purposes. Then, why are we here? Ochako side-eyed him. You just told us to get in the golf cart without any explanation. Easy, to dispose of things we don't want. Stan reached into his suit and pulled out a bunch of golden slips of paper. So long, Mystery Shack suggestion cards. He started pulling more and more out, tossing them in by the handful. In that case, I'm getting those creepy letters from Gideon and throwing them in, Izuku decided, running back to the shack. Soos started taking off his shoes. Shadow frowned. Soos, what are you doing? Throwing stuff, dude. Everyone's doing it. Soos chucked his shoes in the pit as Izuku ran back with the letters, disposing of them as well. Isn't a bottomless pit technically impossible? Mina wondered aloud, as Soos chucked a mini grill into the pit. I mean, there has to be an end to it. You can't just keep going down and down into the Earth's crust. Says you. Stan had taken off his hat and was hitting the top of it, sending more and more cards into the hole. Ochako winced. How many of those things do you have? Lost count at 50, Stan shrugged. A harsh wind picked up around them, sending the hair flying out of Mina's face and rolling dark clouds over the previously clear sky. The suddenness of the push against her face was certainly surprising. Soos put a hand on his hat to keep it from flying off. It's some sort of invisible pushing force. Let's get back to the shack, Shadow suggested, and everyone else quickly agreed. I'm not done getting rid of these yet, Stan snapped, throwing more cards away. This time, however, they flew back in his face and covered his eyes. Stan yelled and stumbled around blindly. Stan! Mina ran back to try and pull the older man away from the pit, where he was standing dangerously close to. He kept trying to put the cards in, and soon all 5 of them were holding on, determined to keep him from slipping. Another push of wind, and Stan leaning forward too much, and they tumbled down into the darkness. Mina screamed, along with everyone else, as the light of the sky got farther and farther away from them. The wind rushed against her skin as she fell down, and she could barely hear her own voice. And then it stopped. Mina looked around. She was still falling, sure, but it felt more like she was just floating in darkness. Everyone else seemed to have come to the same realization as she did. For a few moments, they all just fell in silence together. So, Soos said, anyone want to scream some more? Where are we? Izuku wondered. Mina pulled a glow stick out of her sweatshirt pocket and lit it up, pointing it towards all sides of them. Somewhere where it looks like we're nowhere, she joked lightly. In truth, it was kind of disturbing, not being able to see any walls around them. The pit definitely wasn't this wide from the outside. She put the glow stick band on her arm and watched, amused, as it floated upwards. Welp, looks like we're down here for the long haul. Stan pulled out a deck of cards. Who wants to see some card tricks? He tried to shuffle the cards, but they all ended up floating away from him. Stan looked momentarily stunned, but waved it off. Ta-da! Mina and Izuku clapped politely. Soos smiled. Nice trick, Mr. Pines. Hey, maybe we should pass the time by telling stories. Here's one, Shoto deadpanned. It's about the time Stan got us all thrown into a bottomless pit, where we spent the rest of our natural lives. His friends snorted. Go on, Soos said, hand resting on his chin contemplatively. Izuku elbowed Shoto lightly. What about the time with the grow and shrink light? Where when we first found that? Soos and Stan haven't heard it before. Shoto deliberated for a moment. That could work as a story. Okay then, let's call it Fun Size. Hey Shoto, come check this out. Shoto looked up from his book and walked over to where Izuku was flipping through the journal. The green-haired boy had the journal open to a page Shoto hadn't seen yet. What is it? It says here, legends of miniature buffalo and giant squirrels have led me to believe that there is something containing height-altering properties deep within the woods. He looked up at Shoto. Since the girls are dealing with that mermaid guy at the moment, maybe we could check this out. Sounds fine to me, Shoto agreed. They left the shop together and headed into the woods. I always love coming here, Izuku said, as they walked through the forest. Magical creatures aside, it's really nice in these woods. Shoto raised an eyebrow. Didn't we just run into a tree giant named Steve who wanted to eat your shirt a few days ago? Izuku waved him off. Sure, that was a little nerve-wracking at the time, but it all turned out okay in the end. Turns out he was just angry because those strange manitors were mocking him right before we ran into him. Strange was the perfect verb to describe the testosterone-filled beasts. They especially didn't seem to like Izuku, who had told them that their version of manliness was wrong to their faces, and Ochako, who had bonded with their sworn enemy, the multi-bear, after the latter had introduced her to some band called Baba. Oh hey, I think we're here. Shoto looked around. It was definitely a magical-looking cave, with glowing pink and blue crystals scattered around. Shoto spotted deer that could fit into his palm trotting around the forest floor, as well as giant butterflies bigger than Izuku flying around. A growling noise caught their attention, and Shoto looked up to see a mountain lion staring them down. Izuku squinted at it. Is that thing small, or is it just perspective? The mountain lion leapt at them. Perspective, perspective. He drew his knife, and Shoto lit his hands up with blue fire. Before either of them needed to make a move. However, the lion passed through the glowing pink light of one of the crystals, and by the time it reached them, it was about the size of a small toy. Shoto looked at the little crystals scattered across the ground. These could come in handy for so many different things. Agreed. Izuku used the knife to dig one up. He held the little crystal in the air. Let's see if this thing works with a flashlight. They sat out in the lawn as Izuku fitted their little contraption on the flashlight. He turned the crystal one way, and pink light shone out of it. Smaller. He turned it the other way, and the light turned blue. Bigger. This is super cool. Wait until the girls hear about this. Oh, before either of them could react, someone had snatched the flashlight away from Izuku. Shoto turned to see Gideon standing there, before pink light shone in his eyes, and the ground started to get closer and closer. Gideon cackled as he shoved them in a jar, and Shoto and Izuku could only watch helplessly as they were carried away into Gideon's house and room and emptied on his desk. Gideon, what do you want with us? Izuku said, eyes scanning the room, clearly looking for a way out. Gideon cooed at him. Oh, I only want you to be my best friend forever, you sweet green pea. Izuku glared back at him. Did we go over this already? I don't want to be around you until you clean up your act. Izuku took a few steps back. This is not cleaning up your act, Gideon. Gideon narrowed his eyes. You'll change your mind soon enough, I'm sure. He swung around his desk lamp and pointed it in their faces. Shoto squinted into the bright light. Now, tell me, how did you come upon this magic item, HM? Somebody tell you about it? Did you read it somewhere? Unconsciously, Shoto made eye contact with Izuku. Then he turned back to Gideon. Come closer, and I'll tell you. Don't mind if I do. Gideon leaned in, and Shoto pressed the air horn button next to him. Gideon screamed and jumped back. In a rage, he smacked the desk lamp away. I could squash you right now, and he looked close to doing so before he collected himself. Steel yourself, Gideon. You can use them. He placed his hamster on the desk right next to them before walking out with the light. What should we do? Izuku wondered as they watched him go. We can't let him get the shack or the journal, and we can't stay this height. Shadow frowned. I guess we'll just have to follow him. I think I can levitate us down from here. Are you positive? Izuku hedged. Not that I don't trust you, but your fire is a little wild. Do we have any other choice? Shadow gestured downwards. At their height, the floor was a long ways away. Izuku hummed in thought. I recently figured out more of the tricks on the magic dagger, and one of them can make a strong gust of wind. But I don't know if that would really help or not. He turned to Shadow. All right, I guess it's our best option. Yeah, Shadow concentrated, and his hands lit up blue. The light flickered and surrounded him and Izuku before lifting them off the desk and down onto the ground. Once they safely touched down, Shadow let it go with a sigh. You did it, Izuku smiled at him, and even though they both knew Shadow had no control over whether the fire did what he wanted it to or not, he appreciated it just the same. Let's get out of here. As they crept their way across the floor, Shadow could hear Gideon screaming at his parents over being tickled, throwing his ice cream across the room, and eventually graping the light and heading out the door, proclaiming about how he was going to shrink the entire shack. That kid, Izuku trailed off, and Shadow didn't blame him. Few words could accurately describe Gideon gleeful. They ran across the room and climbed through the dog door. We can't see anything from this size. We need to get higher. Izuku scanned their surroundings before pointing to a $sign balloon with wings. There, they managed to make their way to the top, only to see Gideon get on the bus right before it took off. We need to go after him. Shadow looked at the ropes holding down the balloon. Izuku, can you free this thing? No problem. Izuku took out his dagger and sliced the ropes clean off. There was a tilt and a shudder, and then the balloon was soaring through the air. I can do more than that. I can direct it. He activated one of the runes and made a slicing motion behind them. A gust of wind sent them flying in the right direction. It was an amazing feeling, flying through the air like that. Izuku was laughing and cheering as they soared up and down, and Shadow couldn't help but join in. Eventually, they landed on the roof of the shack, just as Gideon stepped up to the door. Shadow sent a burst of fire downwards, catching Gideon's hair aflame. Gideon screeched and batted at his hair, dropping the light in the process. The two scrambled downwards. Shadow flipped the light to grow and motioned for Izuku to stand in front of it. Then he turned it on, and Izuku quickly grew to his normal height, snatching up the flashlight and growing Shadow as well. Gideon stared at them, hair still on fire. What? How did you give me that? Sorry, Gideon, Izuku said, but we're taking you home now. He flipped the light to shrink and turned it on. So, what happened after that? Soos asked. Shadow shrugged. We brought Mini Gideon to his house and regrew him there, before getting out as fast as we could. Izuku chuckled. It was certainly an adventure. Flying on that balloon was amazing. Getting that thing off the shack wasn't, Stan grumbled. Ochako laughed and took the glowstick from Shadow. Okay, I got one. This happened around the same time as when the guys got that light. I'll call it Hidden Depths. Watch out Gravity Falls, because at 110 degrees, we're looking at the hottest day of the summer. As if Ochako didn't already know that. Her and Mina's wax stand statue melted in the gift shop, and the water in their empty fish tank boiled as she lay down on the carpet, a bag of till slightly cold water that used to be ice on her head. Mina was next to her, fanning herself hard. Soos was face down on the floor with no shirt on. Shadow was spread out on the couch. Stan had his back on the hardwood and a tub of ice cream on his stomach. Wendy had covered herself in a mountain of water bottles, and Izuku leaned up against the couch, sending occasional waves of air around with his dagger. All in favor of doing nothing all day, say Ooge, she groaned. Ooge, was the reply from everyone else in the room. Waddles, in pig form, clopped over to Stan, who glared non-threateningly. I'm gonna throw this pig out of the house. Waddles licked the ice cream off his face and he sighed. You called my bluff, pig. On the bright side, pun very much intended, Toby determined continued on the TV, oblivious to their misery. It's opening week at the Gravity Falls pool. Mina brightened. Gravity Falls pool, and it's finally opening. Aw yeah, Wendy grinned. Staying cool and hopefully earning money at the same time. I'm totally ready for this. Your lifeguard trained? Izuku asked her curiously. She nodded. Got my certification a couple years ago. She stretched out. Stan pointed a pumped fist upwards. Quick, to the car, he tried to get up, but seemed to find himself stuck to the wood. Kids, a little help here, Ochako laughed and floated him off the ground. The pool was already in full swing by the time they arrived with their newly bought swimsuits, with just about everyone splashing in the water or relaxing on a chair. Wendy ran off to join her friends and apply for a lifeguard job, and the rest of them set up their towels on chairs and put on their sunscreen. Ochako slathered the sunscreen on and turned to pass the bottle to Mina. Instead, she found her friend looking curiously out at the pool. Who's that guy? I've never seen him before. Ochako glanced to where Mina was looking and saw a long-haired boy about their age, with a pool floaty covering the lower half of his body. Oh, him? Soos leaned over conspiratorially. They say he showed up at the pool weeks ago and hasn't left the water since. Mina and Ochako shared a smile. Magical creature, you think? Only one way to find out. Ochako turned to the guys. We're going in. See you in a bit. Izuku smiled at her. Have fun. Don't get in too much trouble, Shoto added, looking rather amused. Mina laughed and punched his arm, and the two of them jumped into the pool. Ochako weaved through the different groups of people, diving underwater when she got close to the strange guy. Then she got a good look at what was under his floaty, and she gasped, got a mouth full of chlorine, and had to come up for air and spit it out. What is it? Mina asked, swimming over. Mermaid, she choked out. He's a mermaid. Or merman, whatever. He's got a tail. Mina's eyes went wide. That's so cool, let's talk to him. The merman's eyes went wide as they approached, looking rather worried. Ochako tried for her friendliest smile. Hello, we noticed you've been by yourself for a while. Would you like some company? He frowned. I suppose I have been a little lonely, but I don't know. His accent sounded European, but it was hard to place. Don't worry, we don't bite, Mina assured him. I'm Mina, and that's Ochako. The boy's eyes went wide as he looked at her, and she took notice. I know I don't exactly look normal, but I'm pretty harmless. It is just, he trailed off uncertainly. Everyone here doesn't mind that you are not like them. Nope, she grinned encouragingly. I've made a lot of friends in this town that don't mind. Everyone here is really open-minded when it comes to strangeness. I see. He looked thoughtful. I suppose I can trust you with my secret then? My name is Mermando, and I am, well, I suppose I'll just show you. He pushed away the floaty to show his tail. Ochako didn't have the heart to tell him they'd seen it earlier. Wow, that's amazing. It's so pretty. Oh, you think? Mermando brightened. Why, thank you. Mina frowned. If you don't mind me asking, how did you end up in a public pool? Mermando sighed deeply. It is a tragic story. I was swimming with my friends, the mighty dolphins, when I was insured by a fishing net. They had decided to ship me off as cargo to Gravity Falls, but I managed to escape into the river and tried to swim back home, but it was not to be. I nearly died of dehydration, but was found by animals and ended up falling down a slippery slope, and into this pool, where I have been ever since. Ochako and Mina exchanged glances. Mina shrugged. That sounds crazy enough to be true. I'm so sorry, Ochako told him. Is there any way we can help you get home? I do have a theory, Mermando admitted. This Gravity Falls lake is very strange. It connects to many different places somehow, including the ocean. I do not know how it works, only that it does. If I could just get to the lake, I could go home. But that would require walking there, and I am unable to do that. Not to mention, there is the head lifeguard. He nodded towards a blonde, tan, and extremely severe-looking man. But we can, Ochako punched her palm. Mermando, we've been living with an expert lawbreaker for weeks now. If anyone can get you out of this pool and to the ocean, it's us. I'll go tell Izuku and Shoto what we're doing, and then we'll make a plan, Mina decided. They came back at night, after the guard finally went home, courtesy of Wendy, who was in on the plan. Mermando perked up at the sight of them. You came, but the cooler we planned to use was taken home by the head lifeguard. What are we going to do now? No worries. Mina brought out their new flashlight. Our friends gave this to use. If you're okay with it, we can shrink you down into this small container and then make you normal size again once we reach the lake. Mermando thought for a moment. I don't think I have another choice, and shrinking does seem like it might be fun. Okay, I am ready. Mina turned on the pink light, and Ochako floated Mermando and some of the water around him into the container. They climbed back over the fence and sped off in their golf cart, heading for the lake. You okay in there? Ochako asked him. I am all right. They made it to the lake, and Ochako dipped the container in the ocean. Mina turned on the blue light, and Mermando returned to his normal size. I can't thank you two enough, he said. Ochako gave him a thumbs up. It's no trouble. We're heroes, it's what we do. So, let me get this straight. You guys had to fight giant robots to get into hero school? What about the people who don't have quirks for fighting robots, but can still be super heroic, just in different ways, like heroes who want to rescue people? Well, Izuku trailed off awkwardly at Soos' question. To be completely honest, he had thought about the same thing before, but had always brushed it off, because it was Yua. When said out loud like that, he didn't really have an answer. It does sound kinda rigged, Mina admitted reluctantly. Soos frowned. You said your teacher had a quirk that could erase quirks, right? How did he become a hero? He couldn't have fought the robots. And wouldn't his quirk not be useful for any of those tests you said he made you do on the first day, or you'd be expelled? That was just to motivate us, Ochako protested weakly. Stan snickered. Sounds like a good motivator, all right. Scaring kids half to death on their first day of school sounds like fun. They all fell in awkward silence for a minute. Then Mina took the glowstick from Ochako. So, how about we tell another story? I think I'll call this one, Several Troubles. Mina tapped Izuku on the shoulder, and he spun around to face her, looking up from the journal in his lap. Oh, hey, what's up? She smiled and motioned to Candy and Grenda. So Grenda and Candy stopped by to say hi, and to tell us that this big boy band is coming to perform in Gravity Falls. They're amazing, Grenda gushed. How many times am I gonna love ya? Several times, Candy cheered. Mina laughed and turned to Izuku. So, they invited all of us to go with them, but Shoto and Ochako are busy training with Wendy, so I was wondering if you wanted to come instead. Izuku beamed. Sure, I've never really been that into boy bands, but I also haven't been to one of their shows. Thanks for inviting me. Of course, Grenda pulled him to his feet. You're our friend too. Let's go have some fun and meet some more cute guys, Izuku blushed, and Mina laughed at him, and the four of them headed out. The Gravity Falls Civic Center was surprisingly crowded, with everyone from Pacifica to Magucket there to see the band. Mina led the charge up to the ticket line, where Pacifica happened to be right in front of them. They reached the counter, and Mina held out their money. Tickets, please. The ticket seller, a boy with a massive acne problem, sneered down at them. To late kids, shows sold out. And with that, he slammed the window screen down on them. Mina let out a huff. Rude. Candy groaned. The night is ruined. I welcome you, Death. Come on, don't get so down, Izuku protested. This is Gravity Falls. You know what that means? Doing illegal things is par for the course, and you won't get caught or get in trouble for it, Mina offered. Exactly. Izuku pointed to the doors leading backstage with a massive keep-out sign. We can sneak through there. They rushed towards the doors, and Izuku looked around before tapping the lock with his dagger. It opened easily. That's useful, Grenda noted appreciatively. They all stepped inside and headed towards the door with several Time's name on it. Mina held the door and grinned. Everyone ready? They all nodded, and she opened it. Then her jaw dropped. Instead of a normal dressing room, this one was filled with cloning tubes where little blonde boys were in various stages of development. The actual group of band members were in a human-sized hamster cage, acting very much like small animals. This is not what I expected, she managed to say. No kidding. Izuku laughed nervously. How did this even happen? How did nobody notice that this was going on? What even is this? I mean, they're clones, but how? Never meet your heroes, kids, Grenda said solemnly. Think they have a human-sized hamster ball? Mina. Sorry, had to get that out there. Someone's coming, Candy hissed. They all jumped behind a rack of clothing. A rather large bald man with a gold cane and tooth stepped into the room, looking pretty mad. Terrible show. What is wrong with you boys? You barely even sold out the arena. And Deep Chris, you call that a pout? Deep Chris pouted even more. Every one of you should be ashamed of yourselves. Except you, Leggy P, you were really on point tonight. Here you go. He tossed Leggy P some food, and the man gobbled it up greedily, hissing at the others when they tried to come near. And remember, you can always be replaced by your brothers. Dance for me, child, dance. The clones in the pod started dancing, and the man chuckled maniacally before leaving. Mina stepped out of their hiding spot. Well, you don't see this every day. Izuku's face was white. This is horrible. How could that man do this? Who goes there? Deep Chris asked. All the boys looked at them curiously. Mina cleared her throat. Hi, I'm Mina. This is Candy and Grenda and Izuku, and we're all fans of yours, totally. Who was that man? Izuku demanded. What has he been doing to you? Besides the obvious, Mr. Brassman's our producer. Yo, one of the boys said. He genetically engineered us to be the perfect boy band, but he keeps us in cages. That's so wrong. Candy shook her head. We'll get you guys out of here. But we can't disobey Mr. Brassman, they protested. He says he loves us. If he loved you, he wouldn't keep you in cages, threaten to replace you, and use you to make money, Izuku pointed out. The boys looked at each other cautiously. We'll help you guys escape. He opened the lock on their cage. Let's get out of here. Stan raised an eyebrow. Are you saying that's why we had those strangely dressed pretty men staying in our house for a few days? They had to lay low until Mr. Brassman got arrested, Mina explained. And since they spent their whole life being treated like animals, we sort of had to teach them how to act properly in society so they wouldn't get trampled in this world. It was a pretty weird few days, Ochako agreed, spinning around continuously in her freefall. But it felt really nice helping those guys. Izuku, you want to tell a story next? Sure, Izuku took the offered glow stick. Okay, the name of this story will be Helping Hands. The mystery crew, plus Stan, had decided to go to the swap meet event, where balloons were handed out and everyone was selling their used junk, like a massive party of a garage sale. Look at all this cool stuff. Mina ran ahead to check out Magukit's inventions and Manly Dan's collectibles. If I wasn't trying to save more of that money we got, I'd buy all of it. She flicked some of the bobbly heads and laughed. Shadow sighed and ran after her, a smile on his face. A stand caught Stan's eye, and he rubbed his hands together. Look at these faux gold beauties, they're mob boss quality. He grinned at Izuku and Ochako. All right, kids, prepare to watch the delicate art of the deal. Then he slammed a hand on the table. Hey, hagface, how much for the junk watches? The woman, who looked a lot like a hag, pointed a long knobby finger at him. These are not for sale. Not for you, Stan Pines. The wind blew ominously behind her. The wind whispers your name. Stan looked nonplussed. Right, fine. Less talking, more watch dealing. He slammed money on the counter and grabbed one of the watches. The woman's hand suddenly gripped him tight. Get your hands off my watch. Stan snatched his hand away. Okay, fine. Yeesh, freak show. They walked away from the stand. Someone needs to work on their social skills, Ochako agreed, giving the woman a backwards glance. And their observation skills. Stan grinned, showing off the watch. Boom. Izuku wasn't so sure. There was definitely something off about that woman. Still, he doubted Stan would care if he mentioned it, so he kept his mouth shut. Izuku woke the next morning to the sound of screaming. He ripped off his blankets and ran downstairs, his friends following behind him. There, in the kitchen, was Stan, with neither of his hands. Holy crap, what happened to your hands? Mina gasped. He got cursed, Izuku informed her. Stan shrugged. So I may have gotten cursed a little. It's fine. The watch looks great, and I don't need hands. I have self-respect. I'm sure. But you have a business to run. We're staying with you while you run this business, and you need hands. This world's prosthetics won't cut it when you can actually get your hands back, Shadow pointed out. Let's go visit that witch woman. Izuku was planning on sugarcoating that, but at least Shoto was being honest. They traveled through the spookiest part of the forest together, avoiding spiders and Steve the giant, then climbed a rocky mountain, which was theorized in hushed words by the local hermit to be the home of the Hand Witch. Stan led them into the dark cave, flashlights tied to his forearms. Something tapped Izuku's shoulder, and he shuddered nervously. Guys, whoever is tapping my shoulder, this isn't funny. Not in this place. Seriously? Ochako frowned. Someone's doing it to me too, and it isn't cool. Something scurried along the wall, and Stan pointed a flashlight towards it. There, covering the entirety of the walls, was a massive number of hands. A scream tore from Izuku's throat, and he could hear everyone else screaming around him. The hands launched themselves at everyone. Izuku blew them away with his dagger, and next to him Ochako floated them off her. Izuku noticed a hand launching itself at her from behind, and he sliced through it. She turned back to see the severed hand fall on the floor. Thanks. No problem. Still, there were so many hands, even with all of them together, it was starting to get overwhelming. The witch cackled from above them. Look at this touching scene. Up top, one of the hands high-fived her. All right, you horrible witch, you got me. Stan glared at her. Stealing is wrong, yada yada, etc., etc. Now can I have my hands back? I have a certain one-fingered gesture I'd like to show you. The hands formed a throne for the witch to sit on. Alas, your hands cannot be gotten so easily. The spirits say, the curse can only be broken with a kiss on the lips. What? Forget it, Stan snapped. I'm not kissing that mess. I don't need my hands that bad. You're just making stuff up now, aren't you? Mina pointed out. Izuku frowned. People don't come here to visit a lot, do they? The hand witch turned to him. That must be really lonely. But how is taking their hands going to make people like you more? That's not how fondness works. The witch stared at him, then let out a defeated sigh. You're right. But whenever I bring people here without taking their hands hostage, they just run away. Well, yeah. Stan gestured around them. Look at this horror show. It's creepy even for a cave. Maybe in exchange for Stan's hands, we could help you redecorate, Izuku offered. That way people might feel more invited. I like that idea, the witch smiled. You have yourselves a deal. Home makeover, Mina cheered. With that, the 6 of them and hundreds of hands got to work. When it was finished, they led the hand witch back into her cave. Okay, uncover your eyes. She did so, and looked around the finished cave in awe. Oh wow, I can't believe this is the same cave. And we left a book of pick-up lines for you, Ochako added helpfully. I don't know what to say, the witch gushed. Stan narrowed his eyes. How about, here's your hands back, that would be good. Oh, yes. The witch snapped her fingers, and Stan's hands flew towards him, putting themselves in their rightful place. Shaky, scratchy, oh how I've missed you. He wiggled his hands joyfully, and Izuku bit back a laugh. They waved goodbye to the witch and left the cave with some parting words from Stan. Well, I learned nothing. That's amazing, Soos clapped. I can't believe I missed that. Stan crossed his arms. You're lucky you missed that mess. Why'd you have to go telling others about that day? Izuku shrugged. We are telling stories, and Soos hadn't heard that one before. He passed the glow stick to Soos. Want to go next? Sure thing, and since Mr. Pines had a story told that I wasn't there for, I'll tell one that Mr. Pines wasn't there for. This story is called Soos' Really Great Pinball Story. Is that a good name? Does it have to be a pun or something? Soos pressed the knobs on the pinball, while the mystery crew cheered him on. Go, go, go. This is it, dudes. After 4 long years of trying, I might finally get the high score on Stan's creepy old pinball machine. Then I'll go down in pinball history with the likes of Sal, Gaff, and of course, Pooh. Have you ever tried just tilting the machine? Mina wondered. Soos frowned. I dunno, dudes. Isn't breaking the rules kinda, breaking the rules? To hell with the rules, Ochako cheered. Rules are for those not aiming to go down in pinball history. Soos turned back to the machine, only to lose the game. Failure! You stink, the creepy cowboy skull said. Soos narrowed his eyes. All right, that's it. You ready, kids? They all got up and positioned themselves around the machine. Soos started a new game, and they helped him tilt it into the mouth of the cowboy. Bullseye! They all cheered as Soos' name went up on the very top of the leaderboard. New high score. This is the best moment of my life, Soos confessed. Totally beats my old best moment. The cowboy's skull narrowed his eyes. You cheated. You say that like you know for sure, Shoto pointed out coolly. Oh, I know. Lots of green lightning started flashing from the machine, and they had only a moment to step back before it enveloped them. When everyone opened their eyes, they were much smaller than before, and wearing Western costumes. Guys, Izuku's eyes were wide. We're inside the game. They looked around. Sure enough, the different parts of the pinball game towered above and around them. Dudes, if this is a dream, I never want to wake up, Soos yelled. That can be arranged. They all looked to the cowboy, much bigger than before. Welcome to Tumbleweed Terror, partners. This isn't a good thing though. I do recall I warned y'all not to cheat. I tried to be gentlemanlike, but I'm plumb sick of being tilted. The lights in the machine all flashed menacingly. So now, I reckon I'm going to tilt you. Out of the cowboy's mouth came 5 different metal balls, giant compared to them now, and rolling right for them. They all took off. Does anyone have the flashlight? Ochako cried out. It was in our room, Izuku yelled back, jumping over one of the displays to avoid a ball. Everyone behind here, they dashed into the saloon parlor. Ochako turned to Izuku. Deku, what's the plan? He frowned in thought. Maybe if we shut down the machine manually, then we'll be good. I know where the shutdown button is, Soos told them, but we'll need a distraction. Are any of you good at jumping up and down and making annoying noises? A mystical wind blew through Mina's hair. My time has come, she announced. So while the crew jumped out of hiding and did their best to act as annoying as possible, Soos rode down a cart through the gold mine and into the inner workings of the game, where a big green power button was on. He ran over to it, but then had a thought. What if this erased his high score? Looking down at the warning confirmed it. Soos looked up to see a gust of wind sucking the kids in, and he knew he had no choice. He pressed the big red button. With another flash of green light, all of them were outside the game and normal size. Izuku let out a relieved laugh. We're okay, thanks Soos. Shoto frowned. Sorry about your high score. That's okay, Soos assured him. Now I have an even better accomplishment, save you dudes. Ochako blinked. Wait, didn't that all happen this morning? We just went through that. Soos seemed to notice his shoes and quickly put them on again. Does that make this whole mess our new story? Mina's smile faded. But then, how does it end? Guys, do you see that? Izuku was looking downwards, towards a steadily approaching bright light. Everyone screamed and covered their faces. Then for a moment, they were in the air, before landing with a thump on the grass right outside the pit. No time seemed to have passed from when they entered. We came right back out the top, somehow. Ochako dusted herself off. Not that I'm complaining, but how? Izuku looked down curiously. Must be a paradox or wormhole of some kind. I guess this really is a bottomless pit. That sounds science-y enough to be true, Soos agreed. But that's impossible. Stan leaned on the sign, looking down. No one will believe us. Maybe this is one story we keep to ourselves, Shoto suggested. Agreed. They stood there for a moment in peaceful silence before the sign broke and Stan fell into the hole again. He'll be fine. It was a nice day in Gravity Falls. The mystery crew lounged around the gift shop as Ochako inserted the last quarter into the vending machine. The snack she chose started to slide out of its rack, but got caught on the way down. Aw man, she pouted. And I wasted some perfectly good quarters too. That sucks, Izuku sympathized with her. Need some help? Soos walked over to her. Check out this trick. Bibbidi boop wop. He tapped and nudged the vending machine in certain places, and the door opened up, allowing them access. He grabbed a handful of candy and tossed it into Ochako and Izuku's hands. A genius taught me that once. This just-in weather report calls for a candy blizzard. Sweet, Mina jogged over and took some snacks out of the machine, Shoto following behind with an amused expression on his face. Thanks a lot, Izuku beamed. Soos waved him off, putting his own quarters into the now closed-again machine. No problem. I'd do anything for my fellow Mystery Shack workers. Soos, Stan yelled. I need to scratch myself in 2 places at once. Soos shook his head lightly. And I mean anything. Coming, Mr. Pines, he ran off, leaving his wallet behind him. Izuku picked it up. We should make sure he gets this back. In a minute, I mean. I don't really want to see him helping Stan scratch himself. Don't phrase it that way, it sounds really bad. Mina's eyes sparkled. Hey, don't you guys want to see what he's got in his wallet? Learn some Soos secrets? Could be fun. I don't know if we should be snooping in someone's wallet, Izuku said hesitantly. But something had already caught Ochako's eye, and she pulled it out. Oh wow, a laser tag membership? That's so cool. We should all go play sometime. Shoto pulled out a piece of salami labeled for emergencies, then shrugged and put it back in the wallet. Can't judge him for that. To each their own, I guess. Izuku, obviously losing to his temptation and curiosity, looked at Sue's driver's license. Jesus Alzamirano Ramirez. Oh, he's an organ donor. That's cool. And his birthday, Izuku trailed off, eyes widening. That's today. Seriously? Why didn't he tell us? We could have done something for him, Mina pouted, then brightened. Well, we still could. Day's young, after all. Maybe we should throw something together for him. Shoto's eyes knit together. I don't know. I'm all for giving Soos a good birthday, but maybe he's got a reason he didn't tell anyone. Maybe he just doesn't like his birthday. We should still do something nice for him, though, Ochako countered. Maybe we can ask Stan and Wendy what they think he would like. They've known him longer, after all. Sounds like a plan, Izuku agreed. Wendy winced, and Stan stopped counting his money to focus on them, and Izuku knew something was up. Glad you asked us first before doing anything, Wendy said. You guys haven't heard yet, but Soos hates his birthday. He's hated it as long as I've known him, and probably since he was a kid. Some weird personal biz. Izuku glanced at Shoto. Looks like you were right, but why would he hate his birthday? Personal business is probably right. Shoto sighed. I've never been that fond of my own birthday, or at least it stopped feeling special when I was little. I'm not saying Soos has the same reasons I do, he added at their sympathetic looks. Just that maybe he's got a good reason for it. For your next birthday, we're gonna make it the best birthday of your life, Mina promised. But right now, there's got to be something we can do for Soos. Wendy shook her head. We've tried everything. I even petitioned the government to have this day removed from calendars. Stan pulled out a sheet with his face on it and the words, danger, flight risk. Now I'm not allowed on airplanes anymore. That's really sweet of you, but how does asking the government to remove a calendar date make you a flight risk? Izuku wondered. Stan looked away shiftily. There were some steps in between. Ah! What about the laser tag place? Ochako offered. They all looked at her. I mean, he's got a membership, and we were already talking about going there with him before we knew it was his birthday. That way he can at least do something he enjoys with people he likes. Wendy smiled. Smart idea. I like it. They headed out of the shack to see Soos on the porch, looking glumly at a postcard in his hands. Izuku sat down next to him. Hey, Soos, you, left your wallet on the counter earlier. Soos looked up in surprise, taking the offered wallet. Oh, thanks, dude. Hope you didn't eat my emergency salami, but I can't blame you if you did. No way, that's your salami. But we did see that you had a membership to the Big Guns laser tag place, and we were wondering if you wanted to go with us there, as a big group. The shack employee looked hesitant. I don't know, I'd love to go with you guys, but I'm not feeling up for a lot today. All the more reason to go, Mina chimed in from behind them. Sounds like the perfect way to lift up your spirits to me. Well, Soos still seemed undecided, but after taking in all of their encouraging faces, managed his own small smile. Okay, let's do it. The laser tag place looked as many laser tag places did, with black lights and neon everywhere. As everyone got outfitted, Wendy felt the walls and frowned. Are these just mattresses spray-painted purple? She wondered. I think the place used to be a mattress store, Stan offered. Laser battle will commence in 3, 2, 1. The doors opened, and they charged in. But the minute they did, something felt different. Rather than fog machines and other people running around, Shadow and his friends found themselves in a small, bright white room, where 2 tall men stood. He turned around to see white bars of energy separating them from Soos, who had bent over to tie his shoe. "Soos," he called out, the others turning around at his voice. Soos looked up, surprise and then panic flashing across his face, before the last white wall slammed down, leaving them trapped. Mina instinctively kicked one of the men. "Hey, let us out of here. We need to get to our friend." "Thank you for buying Digi Cod, the smart cod piece." Mina stepped back to rejoin the group, shoulder brushing against Shadow's. Ochako kicked at one of the walls, a metallic clang echoing around them. "Nice try," one of the men said, "but those walls are solid titanium." Now that Shadow looked closer, both of their captors were absolutely ripped, and very familiar. Izuku seemed to realize it as well. "It's those time enforcement guys." "That's right, and there's only one way out of here." "Through me." They turned to see a head and 2 hands, glaring at them harshly. Then the head frowned and messed with something on his watch, his jumpsuit coming into view. Wait, hang on." The jumpsuit turned to its normal color. "Through me, and that's what it would have been like if I'd just gotten it right the first time, but it's still as effective." "You're that guy," Mina exclaimed. "The time travel guy. Blengy, right? Blargy." "Blendo," Ochako winced. "Oh, shoot, sorry. I just remember it was a really hard name to pronounce." "But wait, there was a lot of J's in there, right? And Ellis?" "Blendon, I think," Izuku tried. "Yes, that last one. Blendon Blenjamin Blandon," Blendon snarled. "You better not have forgotten my name after you ruined my life." "We didn't forget," Ochako protested. "It was just a very hard name to get right. Also, ruined your life?" "No excuses," the man shrieked. He fiddled with his watch, and a hologram popped up. "Initiate flashback. It was after you stole my time device to win your stupid pig. I was captured and stripped of my job in the time anomaly removal crew, my whole life's purpose." The flashback showed his jumpsuit turning into prison garb, and then I was given 10 squared life sentences in time prison. I've spent every day since then planning my vengeance. The flashback disappeared. Shadow winced, feeling the guilt rush over him. They hadn't meant to, but they'd clearly ruined the man's life. Looking at his friends' stricken faces, he could tell they felt the same. "We're so sorry," Izuku stepped forward. "Officers," he was telling the truth then. "It was us who were messing with time, not Blendon. We didn't know what we were dealing with. That's no excuse. We should have come clean then and not let him take the fall for us." Blendon stepped back, as if shocked. Then he shook his head. "Why, you're just saying that because I'm about to get my revenge on you," the man insisted. "I won't be swayed by your lies." "They're not lies," Izuku protested. "He's right," Shadow added. "What we did was wrong." He turned to the officers. "How can we fix this?" They both looked more than a little shocked. "We appreciate your honesty, children, but Blendon's fate has already been decided. As you said, you didn't know what you were messing with, and he should not have allowed anyone from the past to get their hands on his time machine, as almost anyone would have used it. He is still at fault here." That wasn't fair. But what could they do about it? Mina winced. "Then can we at least go back to our own time? It's our friend's birthday, and we promised ourselves that we'd make it a good one." "Unfortunately, no," the other guard said. "Not anymore." "Don't think your fake pity will stop me from erasing your pitiful existences," Blendon crowed at them. "And some dumb birthday means even less. None of that matters here in Globnar." One of the white walls became bars again, but this time into a very different place. Shadow looked out into what seemed to be a futuristic gladiatorial arena. People were on fire, falling through portals, fighting monsters and battling each other on giant clocks. As people were stricken with blades, they aged forwards and backwards. Ochako leaned up against the bars. "What is all this?" "This is gladiatorial time combat," Blendon announced. "The winner gets a precious time wish." They watched as one of the combatants was declared the winner, and then decides the loser's fate. The winner turned his thumb down, and the loser was vaporized. Shadow looked on, horrified. "The 4 of you are officially challenged. Dungren, get me my war paint. The mystery crew shared looks. We need to get out of here now, Shadow said. This would be a really bad place to die, Izuku agreed. On it. As Dungren helped Blendin put on his war paint, the other guard, Lolf, leaned against the bars, watching them. With his eyes on the others in the room, Ochako floated his tape off his belt and over to them. They huddled around her as she fiddled with it. Just as Blendin noticed what they were doing and cried out, they were gone. They popped into existence again, flopping down on mattresses. Shadow looked around. Rather than the laser tag place they were aiming for, they had ended up in a mattress store. Mina groaned. Stan said this place used to be a mattress store. We went too far into the past. A familiar sound echoed behind them, and the four ducked under the mattress. Looks like they overshot their destination by 10 years, one of them said. You'd better find those kids, Blendin wiped the war paint off of his face. You'll get your justice, Blendin, Lolf said coolly, looking rather ticked that he'd had his own time machine stolen. I'd better. I'm going to keep stammering until you find those kids. I hate that guy, Lolf muttered to his coworker. Let's move, Dungren agreed. They two of them hopped from mattress to mattress until they were out of the store. I don't piss off that many people when I stammer and mumble, do I? Izuku looked worried. Not in the slightest, Ochako assured him, as they crept out from under the mattress. It's really charming when you mumble. We like you for who you are, and that includes your tangents, Shadow added. Mina slung her arm around his shoulders. Izuku smiled at them bashfully. Let's get moving. Hopefully we can be back before we miss anything. Not yet, actually. Ochako winced and held up their stolen time machine, which was sparking, and obviously a little damaged. I don't trust this thing until we fix it. We'll just get the tools at the mystery shack. It should definitely still be open right now. It was an extremely strange moment, walking through the town. The tattooed man was just getting tattoos, Sheriff Blubbs had long hair, and there was a sign with baby Gideon on it, vandalized by someone drawing demon horns on him. Izuku winced as they walked past that one. And there was Stan at the mystery shack, talking to his tourists about his new wax exhibit. The four of them smiled at each other before running behind the shack and sneaking in through a window. Izuku grabbed some of the tools from behind the counter and started working on fixing the time machine, while Ochako walked over to help a kid with the vending machine, obviously about to teach him the same thing Soos taught her. Shadow let his eyes roam around the slightly altered store, and something in his gut turned over. There was a strange feeling that soaked through him, like he needed to see something. Shadow hopped behind the counter and leaned down, following that feeling, and there under the counter was a framed photo, with two figures inside. Find something interesto. Huh. Mina leaned over his shoulder. There in the photo were two kids, both of them looking about 5 years old and nearly identical to each other, the boy in blue and the girl in pink, wearing their hair at different lengths. They were smiling happily for the camera. At the bottom of the frame was a scribbled note. Stanford. You haven't come to see them since they were born, so I thought you might want a photo. Your brother, Sherman. I mean, it makes sense that Stan's got family, Mina muttered softly. I guess I just didn't expect this. I don't know why. They must be his grandkids. Looks like this photo was just sent. They're probably our age about now. Shadow frowned. I wonder why he's never mentioned them. They could ask when they got back. But he wasn't sure how Stan would respond to the inquiry. Guys, Ochako ran over. That kid, he was Soos. It's his birthday today, and he sounded really excited about it. Izuku perked up, walking over with the machine in hand. You think this is the birthday that ruined his other birthdays for him? Should we go see what happened? Isn't that a little private? Shadow was pretty sure he wouldn't be happy if someone time traveled to his past and watched as he broke down on the ground after being pushed way beyond his limits on his 6th birthday. But if we know what happened, then maybe we can help him fix it in the future, whatever it is. Shadow looked at the others and saw he was outnumbered, so he sighed and followed them along. It seemed to be a great setup for a birthday, and nothing like his own. Soos' whole family and some of his friends were there and happy to see him. His grandmother got him a giant cake, and Soos himself was smiling brightly. Sorry, could you move seats? He asked one of his friends. It's for my dad. I haven't seen him in like 8 years, but he's coming today. Shadow's heart sunk. Guys, we should leave. What? But Soos was running to get the door, and they followed him. Shadow didn't need to hear the words spoken to see the postcard, and young Soos' face fall. The kid went back inside, dejected. Izuku sat back in their hiding spot. I know that feeling. I've been through it myself. But it happened on his birthday, and so it stuck out to him even more. How can we fix this? Mina wondered softly. We can't, Shadow told her. We can only be there for him in the present. Izuku nodded firmly. This way, they sunk lower in their hiding spot as Blendon and his guards came around the corner. They've got to be around here somewhere. I think I heard them. Lolf shot his gun at a tree, causing the small Robbie hiding behind it to cry and run away. Trace their chrono signatures. Man, the sooner I defeat those kids in Globnar, the sooner I get my time wish, Blendon gushed. You know what I'd do if I had a time wish? Dungren had a wistful expression on his face. Retire, spend more time with the kids. Nahahaha with the kids, Blendon brushed him off. Don't you know a time wish can do literally anything? Any impossible problem solved, just like that? Any impossible problem? We could wish for a way home, Izuku breathed. For the first time since Cypher, Shadow allowed himself to hope. Ochako grinned. Not just that who says we can't wish for 2 things in one? We could solve Sue's dad problem and get home while we're at it. A perfect win. Think we can win this? Mina looked as though she could barely hold back her excitement. Shadow smiled. I say we give it a shot. They stepped out of their hiding spot. Blendon, Izuku called out. We're ready to challenge you. No tricks this time. He handed Lolf back his time machine. Blendon jumped in joy. Yes, let the battle begin. Prepare for Globnar. He was cut off. Turns out we can mute him, Lolf noted. Man, I wish we'd known that earlier. They reappeared in the center of the arena, more people than Mina could imagine around them and cheering loudly. A circle in front of them opened up, and out came the time baby they had seen fighting in that great war during their first time travel adventure. Silence, the baby boomed, and when a spectator cheered more, the baby fried him with laser vision. Mina tried to shake away the shivers the baby gave her. Welcome Globnar tributes, Time Baby said. I have a very important nap to get to, so let's make this quick. You each have a chance to settle your time feud through gladiatorial combat. He waved his hands, and numerous weapons filled the arena. You will have until Time Baby is finished drinking the cosmic sand in this hourglass, a robot informed them. The robot pushed the bottle against Time Baby's face. Come on. No, the giant baby protested. It's good for you. Naya. Get ready, kids, Blendon challenged. When this is over, you'll wish you were never born. Or rather, you'll wish you were born, because I'm gonna wish you were never born. There's 4 of us and 1 of you, Shadow pointed out. You really think you can win? Blendon's response was a confident smirk. Of course I will. I've got training. He grabbed a spear and twirled it around expertly. What do you think I was doing in prison all that time? The 4 exchanged glances. This might be trickier than they thought. Still, with their own training, powers, and skills, Mina was confident that they would come out on top. Let the Globnar begin. With that, the audience cheered, and the arena lit up, a scoreboard flashing over their heads. What followed was an almost unending series of challenges: sparring, motorcycle racing, chess, monster fighting, hot dog eating contests, swimming away from sharks, holographic mountain climbing, and more. Still, from their training, intellect, and powers, the mystery crew found themselves gaining a sizable lead, and by the time they finished putting what must have been the final monster away, they had far more points than Blendon did. There is only one final challenge for Globnar, Time Baby told them. An ancient game, thousands of years old, chosen for its exemplification of pure strategy. The ancient art of laser tag. A holographic form of a laser tag arena sprung up around them, and Mina caught Ochako's eye, both of them trying not to burst into laughter. Izuku sweat dropped, and Shadow looked highly unimpressed. The one who touches the victory orb first will win. Yes, time for my comeback. Blendon readied his new blaster. You might be laughing now, but just wait until they turn on the fog machine. You be so sorry. Izuku started firing at hitting him, and Mina ran for the orb, grabbing it. Time Baby finished his cosmic sand. It is finished. The crowd went wild as the teen's point score went up to 999. Blendin screeched in fury and Mina high-fived her friends, all of their faces flushed with exhaustion and victory. You have made victory in Globnar. The giant baby floated down to them. Before I give you your time wish, what is the decided fate for the loser? Death, Mina cheered. Mina, Shadow snapped. She chuckled, embarrassed. Sorry, got carried away. Izuku frowned contemplatively. So, he did sort of try and wish us out of existence, but we also did ruin his life and accidentally frame him for a crime he didn't commit. He's not really a villain, Ochako agreed. Maybe we can turn things around with him. He was obsessed with erasing us out of existence. That's kind of a big deal, Shadow pointed out. I'm not saying you're wrong, just that maybe we should privately let someone keep an eye on him, in case he flies off the handle again. With that decided, they turned back to Time Baby. We've decided, Izuku announced, that as long as you keep a close eye on him, Blendin should get his job at the Time Anomaly Correction Unit back, and be set free. And give him some nice hair, Ochako added kindly. So be it. And so Blendin's chains fell, and hair grew on his head. Really? You're doing this for me? Blendin beamed. I feel like hugging somebody, he turned to Lolf. I can kill you in 30 different ways, Lolf informed him. Blendin jumped back. Yes, sir. Now, children, the yellow orb floated down to them. What is it that you want for your time wish? Shadow looked up at him. Is there any way we can use this wish to travel to another universe? A different one from this? Unfortunately not, Time Baby answered. Time wishes are contained by the restraints of this world. Traveling to another isn't possible. They all deflated. Mina winced. She could admit that had really gotten her hopes up. Automatically, she looked over to Shadow to see how he was doing. He caught her eye and nodded, as if to confirm he was okay, and she smiled at him. Izuku sighed, then turned back to Time Baby. This wish isn't for us then. Time Baby's eyes widened. Not you, but then who? Who is worthy to receive such power? They appeared with Blendin in the present, the laser tag seen frozen around them. Soos, the only one moving, turned to look at them, joy and relief spreading across his face. Izuku, Ochako, Mina, Shadow! He ran forward and gave them all a big hug, which Izuku gladly returned. I've been so worried. You guys just disappeared. Sorry we're late, Izuku said, as the older man let go. We got caught up in this time travel stuff where we had to fight to the death. There was a time cyclops, and a timed eating contest, and a time race, Mina added, and lots more. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is that we know how to fix your birthday. Shadow motioned to Blendin, who brought out the time wish. Soos looked stunned. You guys did all of that for me? Behold, your time wish, Blendin announced. The power to alter time paradox free in any way you choose. We thought that maybe you'd want to use it to meet your dad, Izuku said softly, but it's up to you. You mean I can finally see my dad by touching this thing? And you guys battled through time and space to get me this? Soos looked the time wish over with wonder, before placing his hand on the orb and closing his eyes. With a flash, Izuku could feel all the cuts and bruises he'd gained in Globnar fade away. Bam! Soos smiled. Fixed you up. Enjoy, dudes. Ochako frowned. But Soos, Izuku stopped her. To be honest, he had considered that Soos would end up wishing for something else, even if he hadn't realized it would be for them. Birthdays are supposed to be spent with the people who cared about you, and that dude didn't care enough about me to visit me once, let alone fight monsters through time and space like you dudes. Soos laughed. I've been being ridiculous this whole time. Whoever my dad was, he can take a hike. My family is my Abuelita, Mr. Hines, and you dudes. Thanks for giving me the best birthday ever. Of course, Izuku wiped away his ears at that speech. Are you kidding me? Blendin looked appalled. Do you have any idea what you just wasted? Do you know how many have died to get a time wish? The wars that were started. Oh, that isn't all, Soos assured him, pulling out a slice of pizza. I also wished for this infinite pizza. He took a bite, and it reappeared. And it can do that for like infinity. Everyone expressed their approval at that part of the wish. I have to go back now, Blendon informed them. After everything you kids did for me, with all that stuff you said about the other world on the way here, I promise if I find anything that can help you get home, I'll let you know. Thanks, Izuku told him gratefully. The time traveler disappeared in a flash. Hey, are you guys coming? Wendy called out. The five exchanged grins and grabbed their laser rifles, jumping into battle. You know, maybe we should have wished for our quirks back, Ochako mused, as they were walking home. It might not have worked. Doesn't work over universes, remember? Izuku shrugged. Then we would have wasted the time wish. Good point. Shoto listened to them talk, before Mina tapped his shoulder. Think we should ask Stan about that photo? Shoto looked over at the conman, who was laughing at something Soos said. Not right now. Let's just enjoy Sue's birthday. There'll be plenty of time later. We're not going anywhere soon, after all. Shoto wasn't sure what to expect when he walked into the store, but Mina dancing with Waddles while pop music played in the background certainly wasn't it. Then again, maybe he should have expected it at this point. Waddles had slowly but steadily become a part of the group, after all. Mina noticed him standing there in the doorway, and after a small jump of surprise, she smiled and something in her eyes sparkled. Hey there, Shu! Care to join us? Waddles oinked, and with a flash, turned into a bear, before meandering happily over to Shoto. Shoto rubbed his fur. To be honest, he still wasn't sure what to think about Waddles' new ability, courtesy of Shoto's powers. Sure, the pig bear didn't seem to mind it at all, but this was Cypher's magic, which meant it was unpredictable. What if something happened to Waddles in the future? There wasn't anything he could do about it for now though, so Shoto offered a smile back. I'd be happy to. Mina cheered. Wonderful. I brought those purple popsicles Stan hid in the back of the fridge because he didn't want us taking them. Shoto took the offered popsicle. By the time Stan entered the shack, the three of them were on the floor, Waddles cuddled in Mina's lap. She seemed to have fallen asleep, so Shoto moved her out of the way just in time so Stan wouldn't trip. He managed to catch the edge of her foot and trip anyways, but at least Mina wasn't hurt. Stan got to his knees, then his feet, straightening his glasses. Mina, Shoto, what are you doing on the floor? Being cute and great, Mina offered cheerfully. Stan shook his head. Just when I thought you all couldn't get weirder. Waddles, back in pig form, took the opportune moment to start chewing on Stan's pant leg. The store owner yelped and shook him, trying to get the pig to let go. Waddles finally did so, but took a bit of the cloth with him. Stan, looking fed up, knocked on the door. All right, pig, out of the house. Now. No, Mina held Waddles tightly. There are predators outside. And also barbecuers. You know this town, leave a pig lying around for a little while, and someone will assume their food. Unfortunately, Mina had a point. Stan waved her off. He can turn into a bear, he'll be fine. Pigs are meant to be outside anyways. Yeah, but if he gets kidnapped, that's on you, Mina warned. And I'm putting a leash on him first. So, you're getting a baby holder for Waddles? Are you planning on carrying him around like that? Ochako wondered, as Mina finished paying and took the carrier. The two exited the store together. I think it makes sense to have, Mina offered. I know Waddles can take care of himself, being a part-time bear and all, but Stan obviously doesn't care what happens to him, so it can't hurt to have a little extra security. They reached the shack to find Soos, Wendy, Izuku, and Shoto running inside. We got pictures, Izuku cheered. Curious, the two girls followed. Pictures of what? Ochako called out in front of them as they headed up the stairs. A pterodactyl, man, Wendy told them. And honest-to-God dinosaur. This is gonna be so epic, dudes. Ochako exchanged an excited glance with Mina, and the six of them headed into a dark room, where the others had already set everything up. All right, let's develop the film. Since Soos knew how to develop film best, they watched as he began the process, learning a few things about film at the same time. Eventually, the pictures came into focus. Oh. Shoto stared down at the newly developed photos. That's a real dinosaur. Oh wow, was all Ochako could say at the moment, because on those photos were pictures of an actual pterodactyl flying by. Gravity Falls is weird, but this is a whole new level of weird. Tell me about it, Wendy agreed. That's amazing, Izuku gushed. I mean, where and when else in our lifetimes are we going to see an actual live dinosaur? Shadow frowned. Didn't we see one when we went back in time? Oh, yeah, but we've now seen them twice. Wendy blinked. Hang on, you guys have gone back in time? Mina laughed and patted her arm. It's a long story. There was a sudden roar outside the window, the creature who made it causing the room to shake as it flew by. Izuku removed the temporary curtain, and they all watched as the pterodactyl flew away, leaving broken branches and other destructive hazards in its wake. It's here. The 6 of them sprinted downstairs to find Stan staring open-mouthed at the retreating dinosaur. Next to him was a broken leash. Ochako put 2 and 2 together quickly. You lost Waddles, didn't you? Seriously? He was our pet. Frankly, she was a bit pissed, and looking at her friends, she could tell that they felt varying degrees of the same anger and frustration. Listen, it totally wasn't my fault, Stan insisted. I tried to fight that monster off, I swear. Shadow raised an eyebrow at him, giving Stan his patented unimpressed expression. Okay, I didn't know what was happening until I saw the thing flying away with Waddles. But it's not like I wanted a dinosaur to take your pig bear. Of course you didn't, Ochako assured him coolly. So you'll have no problem with helping us get him back, right? Soos perked up. Dude, yes, Dino Hunt. Wendy looked just as excited at the prospect. That just sounds so cool. I'm totally coming with you guys. Stan was far less enthused at the idea than his employees were, but seeing the hard looks of the 4 kids he had taken in, he seemed to realize he didn't have much of a choice. All right, fine. Let's go track down your shape-shifting menace. It wasn't hard to find where the pterodactyl had gone. All the 7 of them had to do was follow the trail of destruction it had left in its wake. Izuku winced as he looked around at the chaos, hoping Waddles hadn't been too injured during the flight. Mina and Ochako might have been the pig's primary caretakers, but he cared about their group pet as well. Eventually, their path led them to an old church, which had clearly been dilapidated long before a dino decided to move in. Now, most of the front and the ceiling of the place was missing, torn clean off, and music was coming from inside. Curiously, they ventured forwards to find Megakut sitting serenely in a rocking chair near the back of the church and playing a banjo. In front of him was a massive hole in the floor. Baffled, Izuku looked towards the rest of the group for an explanation, but only found faces that looked just as confused as he was. Hey, Megakut, Ochako ventured. The strange man turned to them with a smile on his face. Well, hello, fellers, he beamed at them, as if playing music in dinosaur-infested churches was a regular occurrence for him. I don't suppose that enormous wing-like critter stole your musical spoons as well? Near the back of the group, Stan cringed. Not exactly, but it did steal our pet, Izuku hesitantly explained. I'm guessing it went through the giant hole in the floor. You're diddly darn right it did, Megakut agreed. Not an agreeable sort of critter, is the big bugger? It is a dinosaur. They're not really known for being agreeable, Wendy pointed out, amused. Do you know what's down there? It looks like it goes down a long way. Megakut nodded. That's the abandoned mines down yonder. They all peeked over the edge, looking at the long drop down. Stan started hedging away. Looks kind of hairy down there. Yeah, but you did lose our pet, Ochako fired back. This is a team trip. Hang on, I'll float everyone down. I'll tag along and get my musical spoons back, Megakut insisted. I've got all sorts of weird personal stories that I can tell while we have our little hootenanny. Oh boy. And so 7 temporarily became 8, and the whole group floated downwards into the mines. Izuku tried to drown out Megakut's story about how he kissed a raccoon by looking at the stone walls, noting how the plants became less like the flora up on the surface, and more strange and tropical the deeper they went. Eventually, they settled on a giant mushroom next to a bunch of semi-active geysers, surrounded by the strange greenery and looking into the opening of the mines. Just when you think this town couldn't get weirder, it always manages to surprise you, Izuku said, a hint of awe in his voice. Dude, I've lived here my entire life, and I'm still constantly surprised by this place, Wendy said dryly, as they headed forwards. Like, there's just been some prehistoric stuff down here all this time, and no one even knew. That's just wild. A never-ending mess of weirdness and freakiness, Stan grumbled. Sometimes I wish His screams were soon joined by the startled cries of the rest of them as a T-Rex loomed over everyone. Instinctively, Izuku grabbed his dagger, before realizing that the dinosaur wasn't moving. Nope, it's still stuck. I think we're good. Thankfully, we don't have a time machine to get us away from it this time, Ochako laughed nervously, as they scanned the room they found themselves in. Oh wow. It was a massive chamber, and completely filled with dinosaurs of all shapes and sizes, from many different eras, and, to Izuku's confusion, different places around the prehistoric globe. How did they all get in this one spot, he wondered, as they wandered around. I don't think most of these lived where Oregon is now. And how did they all get caught in this tree sap? Mina nudged Ochako. Mermando said the Gravity Falls Lake was connected to lots of places, including the ocean, remember? Maybe this cave is the same way, and they all wandered in here from across the world as well? She winced as they passed a hole in one column of tree sap, where the rampaging pterodactyl had obviously come from. Best not to question it, Shoto agreed. Absolutely. Why would we question a moneymaker like this? Stan grinned up at one dinosaur. This would be the exhibit of a lifetime. I could bring so many tours down here, or maybe even make it into a theme park. Honestly, I should have put that pig out ages ago. Next to Izuku, Ochako huffed angrily. Yeah, but how would you bring anyone down here without me to help you? And I'm totally not gonna help you, considering we found this at the expense of Waddles. She was clearly even more down about this than the rest of them. Izuku winced and squeezed her shoulder in what he hoped would be a comforting action. We'll find him, he assured her. Ochako sent him a grateful smile back. They moved through the dinosaurs, eventually approaching a cavern with about 10 smaller tunnels leading off from it. Okay, which one now? The pterodactyl's pretty big. We should be able to tell which one it went through, Shoto pointed out, eyes scanning their different options. Hey everyone, I fixed this here old lantern. They turned around to see McGucket grinning at them, and the pterodactyl looming over him from behind. Izuku's breath caught in his throat. Nobody move or make any sudden loud noises, Wendy hissed. For a moment, all of them just stood there. And then McGucket jumped up and down in celebration. Yeehaw, we found the pterodactyl. The dinosaur roared, the sound ringing in Izuku's ears. Everybody run, Stan yelled, and then they were tearing down one of the tunnels, the pterodactyl following right behind them. They exited on the other side and dove behind some rocks, just before their pursuer emerged as well, taking to the air to look for them. Okay, this is looking sort of bad now, Wendy admitted, a note of terror in her voice. What gave that away? Stan huffed. I say we use Soos as a human sacrifice. Oh, shut it, you've already done enough. Mina looked over towards the thin tower in the center of the cavern, which contained a giant egg and Waddles. She sprinted across the rail line connecting their patch of stone with the central tower, and the rest of them followed her. Waddles, currently in bear form, spotted them and immediately perked up, running over for a hug. Then Mina brought the carrier she'd bought out of her backpack and fit Waddles inside it. All right, now we can get out of here. What about my musical spoons? But McGucket was interrupted by the pterodactyl swooping down towards them again. Waddles snorted in fear and made a run for the rail tracks, jumping on top of Stan, who yelled with surprise. Hey, get off me, you dumb bear pig. Hang on, Ochako surged forwards, onto the tracks herself, and the dinosaur made another pass, hitting her square in the head with its wing and knocking Stan and Waddles clean off the tracks. No, Izuku jumped forwards, arms outstretched, and caught one of Ochako's arms before she fell herself. Mind partially noting how she didn't react and starting to panic, he lifted her back into the nest, Mina rushing over to help him. Shoto leaned towards Stan and Waddles, hand covered in fire, but they were already out of his range, and the fire sputtered out. Izuku set Ochako across his lap, breathing becoming uneven. Hey, Ochako, can you hear me? She didn't respond. There was no blood, and she had a pulse, but... She's knocked out, Mina said hoarsely. Getting hit with the dino's wing like that must have done it. Wendy crouched down next to them, suddenly all business. Here, hand her over. Hesitantly, Izuku did so, and Wendy checked over their friend. She's gonna be fine. Bit of a concussion at most. At least Izuku grabbed her when he did. She winced. Won't matter much if we all get eaten, though. Also, how are we supposed to get back up if our ride is knocked out? Soos wondered. Shadow winced. Considering how well my own rescue attempt just went, I wouldn't bet on my fire, but that can be our last resort. Let's just find Stan and Waddles and get Ochako out of here. McGucket, do you have an invention that could distract the pterodactyl? Mina wondered. Do I? McGucket grinned and took off his large hat, shifting through it. Nope. There was a cracking sound, and they all looked up as the egg toppled over, a much smaller but still bigger than any of them pterodactyl emerging from it. They all stared in awe, terror momentarily forgotten. McGucket leaned closer. Welcome to the world, little. The baby opened its jaw and swallowed him whole, to their screams. Shadow stepped forwards, fire flaring up again, and the baby's jaw was forced open, the old man tumbling out of it, looking a little stunned. What now? Mina wondered, as the little dinosaur shook its head in confusion. Maybe Shadow could turn it into something else, Soos offered, like he did with Waddles. Shadow frowned. I don't know. I've never done it on purpose before. Izuku gave him a weary smile. Always a first time for everything, right? This seemed to be a good enough argument, as Shadow nodded, holding out his hand. The fire surrounded the creature, and its head grew about 3 sizes, while the rest of its body remained unchanged. At this point, everyone just screamed and ran, Wendy carrying Ochako bridal style. The baby made to follow them, but its head was too large, and instead it went tumbling over the side, little wings flapping uselessly as it plummeted. I feel a little bad, Izuku admitted, as they reached the other side. Pterodactyls have been extinct for millions of years, and we may have just stopped them from coming back again. Better than reenacting Jurassic Park, dude, Soos insisted, catching his breath. Guys, it's not over. The noise of the adult pterodactyl had them looking up again, wincing, and then they saw who was riding it. Is that Stan? Mina gaped. Oh my god, it is. Well, I'll be darned, McGucket chuckled. He's a real horse wagon of a turnip carrier. Sure enough, on top of the dinosaur was Stan, with Waddles and the carrier on his back, taking swipes at the creature and punching it right in the eye. And with one last battle cry, he slammed both fists down on its head, smashing it into the stone, and climbing onto the ledge to meet them with a satisfied grin. Here's your pig, kiddos. You got him. They ran over to greet him, and Stan passed a happy Waddles off to Mina. Then he spotted Ochako in Wendy's arms, and his eyes widened, alarmed. What happened? She got hit in the head, but Izuku caught her in time. She'll be okay, Wendy assured him. Seriously though, we need to leave, like, right now. Good thing I found my musical spoons in that there baby's nest. They all stared blankly at a grinning McGucket, before mentally shrugging it off and running down the tunnel they had come through. And soon enough, thunderous stomps indicated that the dinosaur was hot on their trail. Eventually, they reached the original cavern and paused, looking around. How are we supposed to get up? Wendy wondered. No offense, Shadow, but I don't want my head made 3 times bigger. None taken. Izuku looked around for another alternative. The geysers, they'll push us back up. They all hopped in one of them, waiting for it to go off again as the pterodactyl drew nearer. There was a moment, as they all waited for the geyser to go off again, and the dinosaur approached them, that Izuku wondered if they might seriously be done for. Then Soos, with a hearty scream of "Bros before Dinos," pounded on the geyser as hard as he could, and they were shooting up at massive speeds, bursting through the floor of the broken church. Quickly, Izuku drew his dagger and sent a gust of air away from them, sending them flying away from the hole in the ground and onto safer land, as the rest of the church collapsed to cover the hole. There was a moment where all of them just laid there, catching their breath. Well, Shadow finally said, in his usual deadpan tone. That was exciting. Izuku couldn't help but chuckle at the understatement. Wendy and Mina joined in, then Soos, Stan, and McGucket, and soon all of them were laughing and marveling at the fact that they survived. Ochako came to consciousness in the living room of the Mystery Shack, surrounded by her friends and fellow employees. For a moment, she wondered why they were all staring at her, before her memory of the previous events came back. Is everyone all right? Izuku perked up, noticing her eyes were open. You're awake? Yeah, I am. Is everyone okay? Is Waddles okay? We're all fine. He's here, Shoto assured her. He lifted up Waddles for her to see, and the pig licked her face happily. Is your head feeling better? Yeah, it feels all right. All right might not have been the right word for it, but honestly, she felt fine enough. You got knocked out by the dinosaur's wing, dude, Soos told her. Luckily Izuku caught you before you could fall. Well, that's a relief. She smiled at their green-haired friend, who blushed a little and looked away. Thanks, Deku. Of course, it wasn't that special anyways. Wendy carried you all the way back, and Soos got us out of there with the geysers. The two named employees smiled awkwardly at the praise. And Stan punched the pterodactyl in the face to save Waddles. It was amazing. Now I'm sad I missed that. She pouted, mostly joking. You'll all just have to fill me in on everything. We will, Mina promised. Waddles settled himself on her lap, and the whole group made themselves more comfy. See, after you got knocked out, that big egg started hatching. B5? Aw, hit. Mina pouted as she put the marker on her battleship. How are you so good at this? I'm just getting lucky, Izuku insisted, smiling cheerfully. Sure you are, Ochako teased, from where she was helping Shoto reapply his bandages. That's why you've beaten all of us every time. No, you've got some special talent in this dumb game, and we're gonna find out how. Battleships isn't a game you can have talent in, Izuku protested. Well, sort of. I mean, any talent in the game comes mostly from knowing your opponents and therefore being able to guess where they would put their ships, so I guess that might count as a talent. Looks like we found out his secret to winning, Shoto deadpanned. And all it took was getting him to mumble "oh." He winced as Ochako tightened the last bandage on his arm. Mina looked up at him sympathetically. They're still not healing, right? Shouldn't cuts like those have faded by now? You would think, Shoto agreed glumly. Then again, they were made by Cypher in the incident that gave me uncontrollable powers, so who knows. But they'll still bleed more if I don't keep wrapping them up. We'll figure out how to fix it, Izuku assured him, and Mina figured he felt just as awful about the reopening wounds as she did. They were like a constant reminder that they had let their friend down, had left him open to possession. I'm sure, Shoto agreed quietly, nodding his thanks as Ochako leaned back on the bed. There was a moment of silence, all four of them lost in their thoughts. Hey kids, come down here. I want you to laugh at this with me. Welp, Stan calls. Mina got to her feet with a smile. You okay to come down with us? Yeah. The four of them headed downstairs together. They found Stan in the living room, laughing at a commercial on TV. One look at the screen, and it was immediately apparent why. Who's cute as a button, and always your friend, little Gid to the eon. Mina made a face. Ugh, Gideon. Izuku sighed. The commercial's less funny when he's so obsessed with you he tries to kill all your friends. Or shrink you down until you're inches tall, Shoto agreed. He's always trying to trick me into losing the mystery shack, Stan commiserated. Broke my hall of mirrors too. Hope the little bastard gets all the years of bad luck from that. Wendy frowned contemplatively. One time I caught him trying to steal my moisturizer. They all stared at her, and she shrugged. Yeah, I don't get it either. But if nothing else, our mutual hatred of him can bind us all together, Soos offered, and all of them made a noise of agreement. On screen, the commercial showed the tent of telepathy crushing the mystery shack, as the narrator said, coming soon to this location. Should we be worried about that? Izuku wondered aloud. I mean, with that finders keepers law and all, Mina nodded, wondering for a moment about who would make a law saying whoever held the deed to the property owned the property, before remembering she had met the man who had founded the town, and realized she could completely understand how such a dumb law would come to pass. The shack owner waved him off. Oh, please. The only way Gideon's getting the location is if he breaks into the shack and steals the deed. There was a sound of a window shattering. You mean like, right now? Wendy said dryly. Stan swore and got up, the rest of them following him to his office, where Gideon was hunched over, punching random digits into the safety lock. He startled for a moment at their appearance, before his expression turned to a smirking one. Well, Stanford, my arch nemesis, we seem to have entered a game of cat and mouse. But the question remains, who is the cat, and who is the... Stan had already had enough. Soos, broom. His employee obediently passed him one, and he marched over to the trespasser, who yelped in panic and tried to hiss at Stan, getting smacked for his troubles as Stan chased him out of the house and into the rain. You know, Ochako said lightly, as they watched the strange scene play out, it's kind of telling that none of us believe going to the police would fix this anymore. Shadow scoffed. Why would we go to those incompetent hacks for anything? True, but I mean, do you think we're becoming a bit jaded the longer we stay here? They all considered this for a moment as Stan closed the door behind him. I swear, that twerp has some major issues. Not that it matters. He chuckled a bit. Kid's not getting anything. The code to that safe is in the one place he can't reach my brain. They all watched him walk on by, back towards the living room. You know, normally I'd agree, Izuku said, but I have a bad feeling he just jinxed it. He puts the old in Old West, Grandpa the kid. I'm tired during the day, the on-screen character said. Stan nodded along approvingly. I can relate to this. Can't we all? Shadow agreed. Mina sent him a concerned look, as Soos let out a yell from the kitchen. Bat, there's a bat in here. Hang on, I got it. Wendy sighed and stood up. Bats won't hurt you if you don't scare them. You just gotta know the trick to it. When did you learn that trick? Izuku asked curiously. When my dad made all of us learn it. Hang on. They watched her leave the room, and soon enough, the back door opened, something flew out, and Soos let out a sigh of relief. How is she so badass? Ochako wondered. I mean, no powers in a world with supernatural dangers, and she's easily the coolest person around. I've learned so much in martial arts from her already, and it just seems like she can do anything. I think she's just my role model at this point. Agreed. If Wendy lived in their world, Izuku suspected she could be a top pro hero. I mean, my role model is still All Might, but Wendy is just the coolest. Oh, thanks guys. Wendy grinned, walking back into the room. You're all pretty cool yourselves, and I would never have gone on all these adventures if I didn't work here. Yeah, Wendy's cool, whatever, Stan scoffed. Now, can you quiet down so we can watch TV? Ochako shook her head, mockingly solemn. You just don't get it, Stan. He narrowed his eyes at her. Hey, don't take that tone. I get a lot of things. I just don't need to hear all this praising stuff, is all. Exactly, she teased. You don't get it. Wendy looked away, a bit bashfully. What Stan will or won't get is a great life mystery, Soos agreed. Like whether it's possible to lick your own elbow. Mina grinned up at him. Bet you can't. Bet I can. And with that, he started attempting to lick his own elbow, moving sideways as he did so. Chuckling, Mina followed him, and after a moment of deliberating whether he wanted to watch Grandpa the kid or Sue's elbow-licking attempts, Izuku decided to follow as well. Eventually, when they were well out of the house, Soos gave up, staring dramatically off into the distance. Like the infinite horizon, it eludes my grasp. Izuku patted him on the shoulder. You'll get it eventually, Soos. Then, wafting out of the woods, was the sound of maniacal laughter. He frowned at the voice. Is that who I think it is? Probably, Mina agreed. The three of them headed towards the sound. There, in a clearing in the woods, Gideon kneeled in front of a circle of candles, chanting as the sky started to twist above them. Around them, the world became grayscale, and time seemed to slow down, animals pausing mid-step or mid-flight. And then, above the circle of candles, a triangle out of the journals appeared, and Izuku could feel his heart stop in his chest. Ahaha, it's so good to be perceived in the real world again. Well, close enough, at least. Cypher floated down, circling Gideon mockingly. Name's Bill Cypher, and I take it you're some kind of living ventriloquist dummy? He cackled at his own joke. Just kidding, I know who you are, Gideon. Gideon looked absolutely stunned, and clearly a bit fearful. How do you know my name? Oh, I know lots of things. Lots of things. Images flashed across Cypher's body, and for a moment, Izuku thought he recognized one of them, but it was gone before he could tell what exactly it was. Here, look what I can do. He motioned with his hand, and the teeth of a nearby deer floated over. Deer teeth, for you, kid. Gideon dropped the teeth in horror. Why, you're insane. Sure I am, Cypher agreed. What's your point? Didn't you read the warning label before summoning me? He made the motion again, and the teeth flew back to the deer, restoring it to normal. This seemed to snap Gideon out of his horrified daze, and he straightened up. Listen up, Cypher. I have a job for you. I need you to enter the mind of Stanford Pines and steal the code to his safe. The three of them exchanged horrified glances. After what Cypher did to Shadow, Izuku knew the demon invading any mind would mean nothing good. Still, this seemed to startle Cypher, if only for a second. Stan Pines, you know what, you've convinced me. I help you with this, and in return, you can help me with something I've been working on. We'll work out the details later. Deal, Gideon agreed immediately. Cypher's hand lit up with a familiar blue fire, and the two of them shook. Welp, time to go invade Stan's mind. This should be fun. Cypher floated upwards. Remember, reality is an illusion universus a hologram by Goldby. Then he disappeared, color returned to the world, and time went back to normal. Izuku exchanged a panicked glance with the others. We have to tell them, now. Stan was sound asleep by the time Mina, Izuku, and Soos got back, and Ochako was winning the second round of a three-way game of war between her, Wendy, and Shadow as they burst through the door. Cypher's back. Ochako shot to her feet, and Shadow froze in place. What? Gideon summoned him, Soos panted, out of breath. He was all yellow and triangle-shaped, like Shadow said, and he agreed to steal the safe combination from Stan's mind for Gideon. We have to stop him, Izuku added. Wendy grimaced. If he's as dangerous as you said, we need to prepare. There's no time. They all looked at Shadow, who was white as a sheet. He's in Stan's head. We need to stop him now. Ochako squeezed his hand. Not much we can do to prepare if we're going into the Mindscape, right? And time is of the essence here. There's a spell for entering someone's head after Cypher in the journal. Izuku pulled out the journal. I'll start setting it up. He hesitated, looking at Shadow. You don't have to come. I do, Shadow insisted shortly, face like stone. They all knew there would be no changing his mind. Mina looked as uncomfortable with the idea of Shadow coming as Ochako felt, but she went over and gave their friend a tight one-armed hug anyways. We've got your back this time, she promised. And always going forward, it's going to be different. Yeah, I know. There was a moment of silence as Izuku finished setting up, and Soos lit the candles. Everyone ready? Place your hand on Stan's head. One by one, all 6 of them did so, and Izuku began the chant. Moments later, everything went white. Then everything around them was grayscale. Hesitantly, Ochako got to her feet, and the others did so as well. She felt for the amulet around her neck, and wasn't too surprised when she found nothing. It seemed the item hadn't followed her into the Mindscape. In front of them was the shack, but a twisted version of it, pieces and planks floating around in random spots, a broken swing set seated in front of it. In the sky, an 8-ball floated inside of the moon. Is this what all mines look like? All gray and kind of creepy? Wendy wondered, as they ventured forwards. Maybe it's because of the way we entered that we're seeing it like this, Izuku offered, though his face showed he was just as confused as the rest of them. Honestly, I thought there'd be a lot more hot old ladies, Soos admitted, and Ochako cringed at the thought. We're just here to guard the safe code from Cypher, she said aloud, trying to ignore the creepiness of the place. Just look out for the triangle guy, and we'll be fine, right? Yeah, look out for the triangle guy, she yelped and spun around, seeing Cypher himself floating down in front of them, blocking their way to the shack. Hey there, sparks, sunshine, question mark, ice bags, shooting star, and pine tree. If the triangle had a mouth, Ochako suspected he would be grinning maliciously. My old puppet. Shadow went rigid, and she noticed his hands were shaking. Don't sound so cocky. We've defeated you before, and we'll do it again, Mina declared, stepping in front of Shadow and sounding far braver than Ochako felt. Yeah, you defeated me. Sure, Cypher rolled his eye. But things are different here, kiddos. You're in my home court now. I'm the master of the mind, and you're just toying with things you don't understand. He was cut off as a laser beam blasted him backwards, and Ochako turned, doing a double take. In Izuku's hands was a laser gun, and he was sparking with energy. Master of the mind, huh? So the mind is something that anyone can manipulate? Good to know. Oh. Cypher looked stunned for a moment, before flashing red. Oh, you're a real smart fleshbag, aren't you, Sparks? That won't do at all. Ochako felt a great weight pressing down on her, and the laser gun faded out of a stunned Izuku's hands. Yeah, don't think that'll work so easily. You're all just a bunch of amateurs, and you're hopeless here, he laughed. Wendy gritted her teeth. What are you really after here? Did you seriously do this just to help Gideon out? Sure I did, Cypher agreed easily. That favor's gonna be real fun to call in, I can tell you that. Well, time to go hunting through those memories. Behind one of those doors is the memory I'm looking for. Later, losers. And with that, he smashed through the front of the shack, leaving a Cypher-sized hole in it. They all stared blankly at the hole he left for a moment, before collecting themselves. Are you ready? Izuku asked, more hesitant than before. Once again, they all found themselves looking at Shadow. He refused to look at any of them. Let's just do this. The inside of the mine shack was even stranger than the outside, with floating stairs of a cloudy abyss, barely connected hallways, and an endless amount of doors. Where do we even start? Mina wondered as they looked around. Away from Cypher. Shadow bit down the thought. They needed to do this. They needed to stop the demon. He couldn't let his issues get in the way with that. He entertained the thought of using his fire since he got it from Cypher, and Cypher was the expert here. Would that be enough to overcome whatever block the demon had put on their own ability to manipulate the dreamscape? But he shoved the thought away. It was already so unpredictable, and the idea of Cypher seeing him using those powers, of knowing for sure whether Cypher meant for him to get them or not, it terrified him. My old puppet. Shut up. Shadow clenched his hands in an attempt to stop them from shaking more. We just need to pick a path and stick with it, Izuku decided. If need be, we can probably split up. This place is strange, but it stands mind, not a horror movie. We'll be fine. Are you sure they aren't one and the same? Wendy joked. Still, it was a good plan, and they headed down the first flight of steps, towards the hall labeled Memories. The memory hall was also huge, fitting for an older man who'd lived a full life. Splitting up seemed to be the only way to cover it all, and so Shadow set off, looking through memory doors, seeing little snippets of Stan in prison, or on a bad date, or setting up the mystery shack sign for the first time. He was about to head down another hall when he felt something. A very odd something, pulling him in another direction. For a moment, he was frozen, yellow flashing in his head. But it didn't feel like Cypher. It felt like something else. Not a person or a demon, just something. Something unexplainable. He headed down the hall, wandering through a darker corridor than the ones he'd previously been through. A few seconds later, Mina joined him. You feel it too, huh? She said. It's the feeling I got after fighting those wax figures. It was. When Mina had pointed it out to them later that night, it was the same feeling. Shadow nodded. What do you think it is? I have no idea. But whatever it is, it's gotta be important, right? They stopped in front of a door, and the door felt like the right one. You want to open this, or should I? I can do it. Shadow steeled himself, then opened it. Inside was the memory of a funeral. It was raining, and everyone was dressed in black. Stan was there, staring numbly at the ground, tears pouring down his face as two small coffins were lowered into the dirt. Shadow shut the door and looked at Mina, whose expression had turned ashen. That picture we found, with the note, do you think? Maybe we should ask him, Shadow offered, even if a part of him didn't want to think about it ever again. Uncomfortably, his mind flashed to a very different funeral, for his older sibling. Yeah, maybe. Neither of them moved for a long moment, just looking at the closed door. Izuku opened more and more memory doors, wondering if the whole operation wasn't just a little too big for the 6 of them to handle. Shout and Mina had already gone off on their own, and now it was just the 4 of them looking through the next hallway. What about this? Ochako called out. The 3 of them headed towards her, and the door marked Top Secret she was standing next to. Looks promising. Open it, Soos encouraged, and she did. Inside was Stan, smiling down at his stomach. Hey, Mr. Tummy. Hey, Mr. Stan. Are you hungry? Yes. Ochako slammed the door shut as hard as she could. We've been searching forever, Soos finally said. What if the triangle guy finds the memory before we do? Izuku hummed in thought. Well, if we want to find Stan's memory, we need to think like him, right? Where would he hide something actually top secret like this? Wendy snapped her fingers. Under the rug. That's where he hides his arrest warrants, I think. Perfect. And right nearby was a rug with a door underneath it. Izuku opened the door, and sure enough, the memory of imputing the code was underneath. Soos quickly closed it before they could hear all the numbers. Now we should destroy it before Cypher gets it, right? Wendy grabbed an axe from a nearby suit of armor. She raised the weapon over the door. Wait, maybe I should do it, Soos offered. My big meaty arms are great at destroying stuff. Wendy stared at him, perplexed. What? We all know I'm the best at this stuff. Then she narrowed her eyes, and Izuku caught on as well, running at Soos and tackling him away as Wendy brought the axe down on the door, shattering it completely. What? And then Soos twisted and Izuku leapt away, watching as Cypher took his real form once again. How did you know? Soos would never say a sentence like that, Wendy scoffed. Really, that was amateurish. Oh hey guys, what's up? Soos, the real Soos, asked, turning the corner. I was looking for Mina and triangle guy. Don't worry, we destroyed the safe memory, Ochako told him. You, Cypher's bow tie rang, and he flinched. Hello, Gideon. How did Gideon call him? Izuku wondered. But that wasn't important, as Gideon demanded to know what the progress was on finding the safe, and Cypher started to panic. Gideon spotted the shattered remains of the door, and fury stretched across his face. The deal's off, he declared. I'm moving to Plan B. Wait, no. But the call ended. Cypher rounded on them, looking absolutely furious. You, do you have any idea what you've cost me? Do you want to know what I'm like when I'm mad? Cypher's body turned red, and the floor fell away as they shot into the sky, racing up into the mental stars. Cypher grew bigger and bigger, towering over all of them, red lightning racing across his arms. Eat nightmares. And then something hit Izuku, and there was All Might in front of him, looking down on him with a face full of scorn and disappointment. Young Midoriya, I gave you my power so you could become the hero I believed you could be. And yet you're simply wasting it in a world with no powers. How could you throw away my sacrifice, my legacy, my trust like that? He shook his head, disappointed. It must have been fate that you were born quirkless. I should never have entrusted one for all to you. You're not fit to become a hero. No. He shook his head, desperate to block the words out. It's not real. It's just Cypher's trick. It's not real. Please just stop. Please be over. There was a rumbling sound coming from where the others had gone off to. Shoto and Mina shared a worried glance before taking off in that direction, stopping in front of the shattered landscape. Above them, they could see flashes of Cypher. How do we get up there? Mina wondered desperately. We need to help them. What can we even do if we can't alter the mind? Shoto asked. I don't know, but we have to do something. But what? Then she got a crazy idea. One crazy enough that it might just work. Hey, strange something, Mina thought. Whatever you're trying to show all of us, we can't do anything about it if Cypher wins here. Please, is there any way you can help us? For a moment, nothing happened, and her hopes plummeted. Then, the something was there, stronger than ever, and the weight Cypher had put on her was gone. With a thought, Mina sent a blob of acid away from her, melting a bit of the floorboards. Ice curled around Shoto's right side. She looked at her friend, and saw the same grin she was wearing reflected back at her. Thank you, she thought. And out loud, she said, let's do this. The two of them floated up to the others, and immediately, Shoto hit Cypher with a beam of orange fire from his left side, sending the demon hurtling back, followed by laser vision to the chest. Mina landed in front of her friends. We're gonna be okay. That weird something lifted whatever he put on us. As if in response to her words, each of them startled, clearly sensing the same things. Cypher righted himself, staring down at them. What? No, how did you? That's impossible. We're in the mind, Izuku pointed out, smiling. Nothing is impossible here. That's right, Ochako put her fingertips together, and the mental stars surrounding them all crashed down onto Cypher. Looks like it's our turn now. Wendy summoned 2 massive glowing swords, one in each hand, and started hacking away at the demon, while Soos hit him with a stomach beam. Izuku started glowing, like he had during the exercise they had done, and the next moment he was in front of Cypher, punching him with the full strength of his quirk. Cypher literally shattered, before pulling himself back together. Enough games, he summoned a massive fiery cannon from his eye, and pointed it at them. Instinctively, Mina pulled up a shield in the shape of that human-sized hamster ball. The blast reflected back at Cypher, and looking around, she saw that everyone had done the exact same, including Shadow. She beamed at him, and he rolled his eyes, the corners of his mouth twitching upwards. "And now for your worst nightmare, a portal out of Stan's mind," Izuku declared. "Everyone, together." Mina closed her eyes and thought as hard as she could. Enough. And then they were all in a white void, with Cypher looking down on them, fading back to yellow. "You know, I'm a bit impressed with you guys. You're more clever than you look. So, I'm gonna let you kids off the hook for now. But know this, a darkness approaches. A day will come in the future where everything you care about will change. Until then, I'll be watching you." Around him, a familiar wheel spun, faster and faster, and then he was gone. Wendy broke the silence left in his wake. "Well, that was pretty ominous." "Yeah," Izuku chuckled nervously. "But at least we averted this disaster." He nudged his friend. "You okay, Shadow?" Shadow was still staring at the spot Cypher had vanished from. "Yeah, I think so. At least, we beat him." "We've beat him twice now, and we can do it again," Mina said, smiling. "However many times it takes." All their forms flicked. "I think Stan's waking up now." "Yeah?" Mina took in her friends' faces for a moment, thought about Cypher's last words, and everything faded to white. Then they were waking up. Ochako opened her eyes in the living room, looking around at everyone else stretching and getting up, including Stan, who seemed rather confused. "I just had the weirdest dream," he admitted, looking perplexed. "Best not to dwell on it, Mr. Pines," Wendy offered. Stan looked at her strangely for a moment, before shrugging it off. Then the side of the room exploded, and Ochako was flying backwards. When her vision cleared, there Gideon was, holding the deed with a triumphant expression. "My minion failed me, so I switched to Plan B, dynamite," he said smugly. Ochako concentrated on the deed, and it glowed blue before the blue faded out, and Gideon smiled mockingly down at her. "Ha, did you think I wouldn't plan for the amulet you stole from me? But I've got the deed now, so get off my property." He switched on his walkie-talkie. "Daddy, bring it around the front." Ochako looked at the giant bulldozer moving towards them. "Well, shit, you know, I'll admit," Mina said casually. "When we decided to stay in the mystery shack, I don't think I ever imagined we'd end up moving in with Sue's grandma. We didn't even really know Soos at the time, so that makes sense." Izuku winced. "No offense, Soos." "None taken, dude." Izuku gave him a smile, before turning to Sue's grandmother. "Seriously, thanks for giving us a place to stay until we get the mystery shack back." "It is no problem." The woman smiled. "The drama that comes with all of you is more than entertaining enough." "Ah, all right." Izuku decided to just take the statement as it was. "Hey, we've been through worse. We can totally get through this," Ochako encouraged. "I mean, we've bested a dream demon in the mind, fought in future gladiatorial combat, rescued a mermaid, dealt with a fighting game character coming into the real world." Izuku blinked. "Wait, when did that happen?" Both Ochako and Shadow suddenly found a deep interest in some spots on the walls. "That's besides the point. Anyways." Stan looked unimpressed as usual, and even more exhausted than he normally did, slumped into one of the armchairs and refusing to look at the rest of them. "Oi, shut your traps. The news is on." In a surprising turn of events, resident child psychic Gideon Gleeful has taken ownership of the mystery shack from resident shyster Stan Pines. The screen switched to show the reporter and Gideon smiling in front of the shack. "Gideon, now that you have the mystery shack, what are you planning to do with it?" Gideon beamed at the camera. "I have a big announcement to make today, and I'd like all the good people of Gravity Falls to join me. Free admission to everyone who wears their Gideon pins." "Every time he speaks, he gets on my nerves more and more," Mina sighed. "We're totally gonna infiltrate this announcement, aren't we?" Of course. Duh. I thought that was obvious. Everyone grab your trench coats and suit up, Stan ordered. And don't pretend you don't have any, I know you do. Soos can provide the hats. The grand closing of the Mystery Shack started off on a cheerful note. Bud Gleeful played some jaunty tunes as Gideon burst through a poster with his face on it, doing a sweet little dance in front of his adoring crowd. In the back, the mystery crew, Stan and Soos, snuck in, unnoticed by everyone. The fact that Stan swiped a Gideon pin to get them free entry helped, although he whined about his hearing aid afterwards. It was a testament to how long he'd been in the town that Izuku didn't dwell too much on the fact that trench coats were actually an effective means of stealth here. Eventually, Gideon's dance was finished, and he went up to a tiny podium painted in his light blue, with his symbol on the front of it. Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to announce my plans for the former Mystery Shack. His father brought around a small tray with a tarp covering whatever was on top of it. At Gideon's signal, he removed the tarp with a flourish. I give to you, Gideon Land. Underneath the tarp was the gaudiest little mini theme park, with tiny moving roller coasters and a giant Gideon statue whose head spun around and around, giant smile painted on its face. We're going to remove this dusty old shack and give you 3 square miles of Gideon entertainment. That little brat, Stan practically growled. He's got no respect for the business, and he's got everyone here eating out of the palm of his hand, including the police. He nodded grumpily towards the 2 police officers, who were looking up at Gideon with adoring expressions. We'll just need to find a way to get the deed back, right? Mina said. He stole it from us, so we should steal it back. Get justice for ourselves, Soos agreed. Stan grinned. Now that's a good idea right there. But we gotta do this right. We're gonna need a plan. We'd better, Wendy agreed, sliding up next to them. If I can't work at the shack, Dad's gonna send me up to my cousin's logging camp. She shuddered. At least I'd get away from Robbie and his dumb texts begging me to take him back, but still. Robbie? The grumpy teen from the haunted store? Guy who got a lollipop stuck in his mouth? Izuku blinked at his friends, who all shrugged with equal confusion. Either way, the stakes just kept getting higher. They were lucky they had won that photo contest. Shouto bought everyone pizza, and the group gathered in Sue's living room to plan. Stan drew out a map of the shack and surrounding area, and Izuku flipped through the journal for anything that could help them. I got more of those glow and shrink crystals from the woods, he said, laying them out in front of him, before putting them in a bag. Just in case we need extras. Worse comes to worse, we can just shrink Gideon while we grab the deed. That's a good plan, Mina agreed, petting Waddles. Those can definitely come in handy. Right? Oh, and I can use the dagger to open the locks on the house and safe, so we're good there too. Stan shook his head, not looking up. Wouldn't work. I magic-proofed all my locks after Gideon first showed up. Gonna have to pick it the old-fashioned way. Another problem we're going to have is McGucket. They all looked at Shouto, and he explained further. I saw him working on that big Gideon statue, and we all know McGucket makes some crazy and deadly inventions. I wouldn't be surprised if he made some for Gideon. Just what the kid needs, deadly weapons, Stan grumbled, finishing his outline. Okay, all done. Wendy, Soos, you got all the changes that Gideon's made so far? You bet, Mr. Pines. Soos moved over and started marking them down. His giant statue is here, and his dig site is here. Ochako blinked. Dig site? Yeah, it's really weird, Wendy confirmed. Not really sure what he's digging for, but he's super intense about it. Cackling about unlimited power and all that. Instinctively, Ochako looked at Stan, who would know better than anyone if something dangerous and magical was buried near the shack. His shifty look at Wendy's words was confirmation that there probably was something of the sort. Suddenly, Izuku's head shot up. You don't think he's looking for this, do you? He held up the journal. It was buried near the shack, and some of the things Gideon has used or has gone after have shown up here. Stan's eyes widened at the sight. What the hell? What is that? Right, we didn't tell you. Izuku showed him the cover, so he could get a clearer look. See, around when we first got here, I found this journal by an unknown author, cataloging different mysteries of Gravity Falls. I just wondered if he's after it. Well, once we get the deed back, maybe we'll know. And with that, Stan turned away, effectively ending that conversation. Then he grimaced. Oh, my hearing aid. Strange. The sun went down, and they put their plan into action, Stan leading everyone through a small hole in the fence near the back, watching the big, beefy guards Gideon had hired patrol the area. Wendy turned to Shoto and Ochako. You two remember everything I've taught you? Shoto nodded, and Ochako gave her a thumbs up. Okay then, let's do this. The three of them set out ahead of everyone. Shoto waited in the darkness for one of the guards to pass, before easily knocking him out and dragging him into the bushes, all the while marveling at how much his own combat skills had grown since he'd gotten here. Before, his old man had always made him focus on using his quirk, not actual combat. Sure, Shoto had learned to dodge out of necessity, but actually fighting hand-to-hand had never been a strength of his. Now, he couldn't use his quirk, and had little control over his strange chaotic magic, but his fighting skills had improved in leaps and bounds. There was probably a lot of dramatic irony to be found there. Ochako grinned as she knocked out the final guard. Okay, we're clear, she whispered back to everyone else, who emerged from the fence to meet them. Mind if I join in your defense lessons? Izuku asked Wendy, looking a little odd. Next to him, Mina nodded vigorously. Maybe next time, Wendy agreed, as they approached the shack, guarding Stan as he picked the lock, and looking out for the gleefuls. A minute passed, and Stan let out a quiet noise of victory. We're in. They all crept through into the shack, as silently as they could, making their way towards the safe. All right, now we just need to figure out Gideon's code. Stan grimaced and grabbed his ears again. Ah, what the? Aha! They all spun around to see Gideon standing in front of them triumphantly, holding the deed in one of his hands. I knew you'd try and come back to get this. Did you really think you could steal my deed on my own property? I'm gonna have you arrested for this. Izuku made a panicked noise and turned on the size-changing flashlight, shrinking the deed until it slipped right through a surprised Gideon's hands. What? Not this again? The boy made to grab it, and Shoto stretched out his arm, pulling with his fire and praying that nothing would go wrong this time. For once, it actually worked, and the deed flew right into Izuku's hands, who grew it back to normal size and sprang to his feet. All right, let's get out of here. You don't need to tell us twice. The seven of them sprinted out of the shack and down the lawn, towards the woods. Gideon probably still has something up his sleeve, Shoto pointed out, as they dashed through the trees. Definitely, Stan agreed. Wendy, you and I are gonna hold him off while the others get to Soos' house. The older man reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a pair of brass knuckles, fitting them on his hands. Think you can handle it? Course I can, Wendy agreed, grinning and showing off the bat she had swiped from inside the shack. You guys keep going. Be careful, dudes, and so the five of them kept running forwards. We still need to prove that the deed is ours again, Izuku panted, as they reached the parking lot where tourists usually arrived, one empty bus parked in the corner. But at least we have it back now. The ground behind them shook. Slowly everyone turned around. There, cutting through the trees, was the giant Gideon statue, now glowing and moving towards them at high speeds. Give me back my deed. Okay, so the giant statue is actually a giant robot, Mina said faintly. Who knew? Everyone to the bus, dudes. They scrambled into the bus, and Soos sat in the driver's seat, pulling them out of the parking lot and away from the robot. This might be a bad time to ask, but do you know how to drive a bus? Izuku asked worriedly. Yeah, I had a couple lessons, Soos assured him. One of these things is probably a clutch, hang on. They sped faster, the giant Gideon bot still stomping towards them, swiping his hands and trying to grab them. A hand went down right in front of them. Look out! Soos yelled and swerved the bus, sending them off the main road and plowing them through a road closed sign. The road continued, leading up and around the mountain, again and again, the robot climbing up the sides to meet them. Soos, Cliff, Mina screamed, as they approached the end of the road at the top of the mountain. Soos slammed on the brakes and swerved again, and they went sideways towards the edge, stopping just at the end, the back wheels dangling precariously off the edge. The robot stomped towards them, and Soos tried to get them moving forwards, to no avail. Gideon picked up the entire bus and shook it hard, everyone clinging onto seats for dear life. The roof tore right off, and a giant hand swooped in towards Izuku. Shadow didn't think, just acted, grabbing Izuku's arm and pulling him away. Gideon snagged the back of his friend's jacket and lifted upwards, the motion tearing the fabric and sending them flying into the air. There was a moment where the two of them were holding arms and free falling, before Izuku swiped downwards with his dagger, slowing their descent. The two of them collapsed onto the bridge between the two cliffs, bruised but alive. Gideon jumped down after them, shaking the bridge, and, faster than they could react, grabbing both of them with separate hands. He straightened up and cackled, before Shadow found himself flung onto the opposite cliff, sliding against the ground and into a rock. For a moment, his vision went fuzzy, and he could feel the cuts on his arms reopening again. Gideon grinned down at Izuku. With the deed to the shack, I'll finally get journal number 1 and gain unimaginable power. I'll rule this town, with you by my side. Ahahaha. Journal 1? What, let me go? Izuku beat against the robotic hand, to no avail. What now? If he had his quirk, he could have taken down Gideon's robot easily before it ever came to this. Now all he had was weak and uncontrollable chaos magic, and Gideon was walking away from him, not yet in range of the girls and Soos, with Izuku trapped. Useless. No, he decided. I'm not useless without a quirk. I can still be a hero. Shadow backed up into the trees, then ran as fast as he could and leapt off the ledge, screaming to get Gideon's attention. Gideon turned to face him, and Shadow smashed feet first into the younger boy, knocking him down and the robot down with him. He took note of Gideon's outfit, seeing the sensors. Don't mess with his left hand, that's where Izuku is. Or he forced the hand open and heard Izuku's cry of relief. Gideon got to his feet and went for a punch, but Shadow caught it easily. You've done enough damage, Gideon, he said coolly. Stay away from my friends. Then he grabbed Gideon's hand and turned it on the boy, forcing him to punch himself in the face twice. The robot's fist collided with them, and the room they were in spun around and around, forcing them away from each other. As Gideon went flying sideways, so did the robot, and it tumbled off the railway bridge. Shadow felt them falling and grabbed Gideon, before leaping towards the eye, out of the tumbling robot. Gideon screamed and pushed away from him, kicking out and causing Shadow to lose his grip. For a moment, they were both free-falling, careening towards the ground. And then someone caught Shadow, and his descent slowed. Dazed, he looked up to see Mina, smiling at him and lowering them with her grappling hook. Got you. We're all good. He looked over to see Ochako floating down as well, with Izuku, Soos, and Gideon all safely in her telekinetic grasp. Looks like Gideon wasn't wearing whatever it was that cancelled the amulet's powers, thankfully. Must have been inside the robot itself. Izuku beamed at her, and Gideon gave her a look that was somewhere in between a glare and a confused stare. Below them, the robot hit the ground and exploded, blue light flaring up for a moment, before there was silence. The 6 of them touched the ground, and for a moment simply caught their breath. Then the mystery crew were together, hugging each other tightly. You saved me. You both saved me. We all saved each other. An incredulous laugh tore itself from Shadow's throat. Oh my gosh, that was a genuine Shadow laugh. This is the best day ever. The others laughed, and Shadow elbowed Mina in the ribs for that. She just laughed harder, and he couldn't help but smile, because they were all alive. And they did it. He did it. The sound of cop cars pulled them out of their celebrations. More cops than Shadow had ever seen in Gravity Falls gathered around them, people from around town wandering over to see the cause of the explosion. Gideon! The 2 familiar cops ran towards the boy, checking him over. Are you all right? What happened? Gideon sniffed. It was those teenagers, the ones who worked at the mystery shack. They attacked me, and blew up my statue with dynamite, and you need to arrest them. Shadow could feel the glares of the population settling on them, and he bristled. We did no such thing. Gideon was the one with the dynamite, and he was the one who attacked us now. He stole the deed away from Stan and tried to attack us for getting it back, Izuku insisted. Blubs shook his head. Sorry kids, but we trust Gideon. Nothing short of a miracle would change our... He was interrupted by a screeching sound as Stan's car swerved in front of them, Stan and Wendy getting out. Stop everything. We've got something to say. Gideon is a fraud, and we figured out how to prove it, Wendy announced. The two of them ran towards the broken robot and shoved aside one of the still unbroken panels. Explain this, Gideon. Everyone peered inside, then reeled back in shock at the footage they found. Videos of everyone and their personal lives replayed in front of them, revealing all the secrets Gideon had claimed he knew through psychic abilities. That's right. These pins are hidden cameras, and my old hearing aid was picking up the feedback. Stan held up the camera he had swiped before, and one of the videos in the robot panned around with the motion. Wendy grinned. How's that for psychic? Stan crushed his pin, and the other townsfolk threw theirs down, furious gaze turning from the mystery crew to the fake psychic they had trusted. Gideon laughed nervously. You know, Soos said casually, after you attacked us, Ochako saved you from falling to your doom, and the first thing you did after that was to try and get her arrested. That's pretty uncool, dude. Those words seemed to break the dam of anger and betrayal the citizens of Gravity Falls had been holding in. Gideon, we gave you our trust. You lied to us. You really did try to attack those poor kids. Gideon backed away. Please, it's not what it looks like. What are you going to do with me? Derlin sighed sadly. Tyler? Tyler wiped away a tear. Get him! Get him! Gideon, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, attempted murder, and breaking our hearts. Sheriff Blubbs sniffed. Derlin, the tiny handcuffs. Just one more thing, Stan said, as Gideon was led away. He lifted the boy up and shook him out, dislodging a bunch of miscellaneous items and a journal. Then he opened his hand, and Izuku gave him the deed. He grinned and held it up for the cameras. I believe this belongs to me. And there you have it, the reporter said. Town hero Stan Pines and his employees have just exposed little Gideon as a fraud. What do you have to say to the town, Stan? Stan grinned at the camera. The Mystery Shack is back in business, baby, and we'll be having a great reopening party in 2 days. That's not a lot of time, Shoto noted, as they lounged around the living room, watching themselves smile on camera. Think we can pull it off? Course we can, Stan boasted, counting the massive wads of cash he had gotten for the first day of reopening. We just put that little bastard away for good. A party's easy compared to that. Has anyone seen my journal? Izuku asked from the kitchen. Or the journal Gideon had. They're both missing. Haven't seen it, Mina admitted. Stan waved him off. Oh yeah, I borrowed both of them. There's some good potential attractions in there. What hey? Izuku popped his head into the living room, frowning. Ask next time, okay? Yeah, sure, of course. Stan ruffled his hair as he left the room, and Izuku plopped down next to Ochako. He's a weird one, isn't he? He said lightly. I think we figured that out when he let us stay here to begin with, Ochako joked. Then she sobered. Hey, Deku? Can I ask you something? You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but it's been on my mind since we left Stan's dreamscape. No problem. What is it? Izuku tried to think of what could be bothering her, realized that everything that had happened in Stan's mind was pretty ominous, and decided not to try and guess. When Cypher was hitting us with our nightmares, I kind of overheard yours, and I can see why that would be a nightmare. All Might telling anyone that they betrayed him would be a nightmare, but fake All Might said something about you being born quirkless, and one for all, I was just wondering what that means. Izuku's blood ran cold, and his heart froze in his chest. Mina and Shoto were both looking at them curiously now, and Izuku had no idea how to deflect the question properly. Ochako clearly saw his terror. You don't need to answer if you don't want to. Sorry for bringing it up. And that would be an easy out for him, except Izuku thought about how Shoto had told them of Endeavor's crimes, and of all the life-threatening things they had gone through together. He weighed his options carefully in his mind. In the end, his heart chose for him. You can't tell anyone about this when we get home, okay? He begged. Please, it's really important. We can keep secrets, Shoto assured him, and Izuku couldn't help but laugh a little, because of course Shoto could keep secrets. He could trust these guys. There wasn't anyone he trusted more. I was, quirkless. All the way up until the entrance exam for UA, he admitted softly. Everyone told me I could never become a hero, but I wanted to, so badly. Then I met All Might, and I guess he saw something in me. He told me I could become a hero. He took a shaky breath. All Might's quirk is called One for All. It stockpiles quirks, and you can pass it from one person to the next, so it keeps gaining power. Eventually All Might got it, and right before you he passed it on to me. He let out the breath. So you can't tell anyone, okay? All Might doesn't want the world knowing. We won't, Mina immediately agreed, eyes wide. That's so Izuku, that's so cool. Freaking All Might gave you his quirk? That's amazing. And it explains why you kept breaking your arms trying to use it. You weren't used to it, Ochako agreed, clearly connecting the dots in her mind. Izuku let out an awkward laugh in agreement. Still, his eyes drifted over to Shadow. Considering Endeavor's issues with All Might and what he did to Shadow because of it, would he be upset to know Izuku had his quirk? What I don't get is why you sounded so confused when telling us All Might chose you, Shadow finally said. I would have thought it was obvious. I can't imagine you as anything but a hero, quirk or not. You've more than proven you don't even need a quirk to be a hero. That's just who you are. Shadow, Ochako winced. Oh no, Deku, don't cry. Did I say something wrong? Shadow asked, concerned. No, you didn't. It was great. These are happy tears. Izuku wiped his eyes and smiled. I'm just so lucky to be friends with you all. We're lucky too. Mina crushed him in a hug, and soon the other two joined. Izuku tried and failed not to cry into their shoulders. Mina looked nervously at Shadow, who nodded seriously, and they both approached Stan. Hey, Stan, can we talk to you for a second? Stan blinked up at them. Huh? Oh, yeah, sure. What's up? Mina took a deep breath and pulled out the photo of the two kids. In front of them, Stan froze. We found this while we were cleaning up the shack, and we were wondering who they were. Do you have grandkids? Stan stared at them both for a long moment, and Mina wondered if they had crossed some line. Then he sighed, taking off his fez and running a hand across his forehead. Not grandkids. Those are my great niece and nephew. They were supposed to come for the summer a few years ago, but they got in a car accident, and, well... Mina remembered the memory of the funeral, and her heart sank. Sorry for bringing it up, Shadow said quietly. Nah, it's fine. You were just curious. I get it. Stan made a face. It's weird, having kids staying with me now. You're all the age they would have been. He shook his head. Sometimes I see you kids doing things, and I can't help but be reminded about Shermie's descriptions of them. I think you would have been a great uncle, Mina encouraged. You're so good to us, and we're not even family. I'm sure they would have loved you. Stan scoffed in a way that implied he didn't believe her, but his eyes softened. Thanks, kiddo. I'm sure they would have liked you guys as well. And in the back of her mind, Mina felt that something once again. It sounded almost amused. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 5. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author jkawsome on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.